surely no self-respecting FNAF fan would make such an amateurish mistake, right?
Hello everyone, welcome to the Horror Homestead. My name is Devin, but you can call me GiBi, and I'm here with a special guest today. I'm here with JJ McCullough from the channel JJ McCullough. Do you want to introduce yourself to my audience a little bit?
Yeah, hello friends, I'm JJ. I'm a YouTuber who lives in Vancouver, and I make videos about various sort of cultural topics, cultural literacy, cultural analysis. I do some sort of history type stuff, some kind of political commentary type stuff, a pretty diverse array of subjects, wouldn't you say?
As someone who's been watching you for years, I would definitely say that the breadth of your content is very, very wide, and it's able to reach people who sort of interested in the things you talk about. Like, you make a Super Mario video, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch that. You make a video about something I've never heard of, I'm like, well, I'm going to go learn about that. And as people who watch my content a lot know, that's the exact kind of thing I'm hoping to make on my channel. You've said before that one of your blind spots culturally is Five Nights at Freddy's, and so that's kind of what we're going to be tackling today. I've created a quiz for you, and we're going to see how many questions you get right. And as we go, we're going to use it as an excuse to sort of teach you some of the more surface level things about the franchise.
Splendid.
What's your experience been with Five Nights at Freddy's?
So actually the very first video I ever made for my channel was one of these Five Nights at Freddy's playthrough kind of reaction videos.
It is the most popular game in the whole world right now.
The whole world?
The whole world. All I know about it is that it involves scary animal things.
Oh no.
And it's scary.
I'm sure you guys all remember what a phenomenon that was in sort of the mid 2010s. You know, I was playing it with my friend, and then, you know, there's the reaction shot when the monsters jump out at you.
How do we conserve power? We're gonna run out of time.
So is power is used every time?
And, you know, I did it because that was a fad, and I was just starting YouTube, and I was like, okay, what can I make as my first video? I may as well attempt to jump on this bandwagon, and then, you know, just kind of use it as a video editing exercise and kind of how YouTube works and that sort of thing. After playing the game for the purposes of making that video, I kind of, didn't really follow the franchise, except to the extent that it's kind of in the kind of culture, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've absorbed things through cultural osmosis. You know, I'm a big fan of kind of like cultural literacy theory, you know, the idea that in order to kind of like function in a modern cultural society, you kind of have to know like kind of a very surface level amount on just about everything in order to just like communicate with your fellow man and all that. So I feel like I've kind of like passively observed and kind of learned some things about the franchise, not through playing the games, but just by sort of having my eyes open and kind of being aware that this is, you know, it's a franchise that's marched on. I know that there's been sort of many games and there's many characters and all this kind of stuff. So I'm actually curious to do this quiz and to see just kind of through a kind of passive cultural osmosis what I've retained and how culturally literate I am or am not, just in this kind of way. So
yeah, that's awesome. Cultural literacy is one of the things I talk about most on my channel. People come to FNAF-centric videos to sort of learn about the games or hear people's opinions. And then I'll make a video where I'm just talking about Frankenstein for like half an hour, because that's a big basis in like the behind the scenes stuff that makes FNAF work. It's like, oh, they're bringing things back to life via electricity. And people are like, I just want to hear about the scary bear. And I'm like, well, you kind of need to understand where this stuff is coming from in order to know like what the author's intending to do behind the scenes. So I think my audience will get a kick out of someone who knows cultural literacy stuff, but isn't in tune with FNAF versus the content I make, which is usually someone who's interested in FNAF trying to learn the cultural literacy stuff.
I'm definitely very aware that like the lore is very elaborate at this point.
Yes.
And I find that to be like quite intimidating. You know, there's some franchises where, you know, you can kind of get a general sort of handle on it relatively easily. And then there are some franchises where the lore is so elaborate that it becomes quite alienating and you kind of like have to kind of just take a step back. And I do get the impression that FNAF, you know, in a way that is kind of surprising when we think about where it started from versus what it has become. So yeah, I'm curious to dive in and see.
I'm going to say that this very surface level stuff, as we go on, you might be hit with the, oh my God, how is this just the surface? Totally normal reaction. We're also only going to cover the first 6 games because doing more than that, we'd literally be here for 10 hours. And
Okay.
also, the more newer games, their story's not done being told, and so it's a lot more complicated to just be like, and then Bob walked in, and we have no idea who Bob is, but some people think that he's a robot, and some people think that he's actually God. Like, if we're getting into speculation stuff, it's going to be much more difficult than at least the stuff that's already been solved. But we're going to get going with FNAF 1, released in August of 2014. So, question 1. This should be super simple for someone who's played the game 10 years ago.
Yes.
All right, famously, how are gameplay instructions conveyed in the first FNAF game? There's going to be multiple choice. Most of these questions are multiple choice.
Yeah. Okay.
Diegetic phone calls, a VHS-style retro how-to tape that plays when you first start the game. There are no instructions, or you have to read the Steam page for the game.
Okay, so it is the first one. It comes through the answering machine message, right? That's left on the phone when you sort of start in the control space. What do they call it? What is the name of, like, is it the control station?
The
or,
office.
You know, like
the security
the
office.
Okay, yeah, the security office. Yeah,
You're a security guard watching the cameras, and you get a call from phone guy.
And I know this. I know that the
Yeah.
phone guy is actually is Scott Cawthan himself, right?
Yes, yeah, he did all of the voice acting for the first couple games. So this is what I meant when I say that we're going to do some educational stuff. So you got the question right. Phone call.
Okay.
So each night begins with a phone ringing. The previous night guard is leaving instructions for the character and also the player at the same time. So there'll be a little dialogue like, oh, yeah, the robots are going to come to get you and stuff you in a suit. They used to be able to walk around during the day until the bite of 87. Now they can only walk around at night. So that's like a little lore thing dropped in, but then he'll also go, when they come to your windows, make sure you hit the button that closes the door. This will cause your power meter to go down. If the power meter goes down, you lose the game. So it's in-universe lore stuff for the character and also instructions, the tutorial for the player. At the time, a very sort of meta way of delivering that kind of instructions to a player in a very like minimal way. There's a reason the first game was so popular. Do you know what happens to Phone Guy? Is he killed by the animatronics? Does he retire down to Florida? Is he the murderer? Or is he promoted to the CEO after the game?
I don't really remember. Is he killed by them? Like, I feel like that would make sense in the context of the sort of the horror vibe of the game. I don't know if that's true. I could see him being killed by them, though.
All right, you're going to lock that in as your final answer?
I guess so, yeah.
All right, that is completely correct.
Oh, nice. Yes,
the
Okay.
fourth night of the game, we hear Phone Guy being like, oh my god, it's been a bad night. They're going to get into the office. And then we hear him die on the recording. So as we head into the final harder nights of the week, we now have learned that like our mentor, our protege has been killed before us. So it's going to be much more difficult for us.
Yeah, I feel like I remember this now, actually. I mean, the phone adds a lot of atmosphere to the game, right? Like the idea that there's this deeper sort of backstory that you only kind of get in the smallest little snippets. Yeah.
We skipped over questions like, do you know the names of the animatronics? I assume that you do.
I think so. I mean, the ones that, okay, do you want to try this now? Let me see if I can do it.
Just the ones from the first game.
Okay, there's Freddy, the bear.
Yes.
There's Chica, the bird.
Yeah.
There's Foxy. Foxy is the pirate fox.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the purple rabbit, Bonnie?
Yes.
Okay. Is that and that's all of them, right?
That's the core four. That's the classic band. And those are really the only names that I sort of assume, and like you said, cultural osmosis. That everyone would see like on the movie poster on a Funko Pop or something. Those are the main characters.
Yeah, I'm impressed with myself that I got all of those.
Yes, I'm very excited. You said you were telling me earlier that you have a couple like things behind you. You have quite an array of cultural objects behind you, and you have a Foxy Funko Pop, and I think you had a cupcake at one point.
I do. Yeah, and the cupcake is in that's actually, I have it right here. The cupcake is in the first game as well.
Yes. And
I don't know if it has a name. I'm sure it eventually is established as having a very rich role in the FNAF universe, but if it has a name, I don't know it.
There's quite a lot of cupcake lore. It's never been named it's never been named in the series, but fans call it Carl the Cupcake for alliteration reasons. And then in the movie, there's a scene where a character whose name is Carl gets killed by the cupcake, And so we kind of think
Okay.
that was Scott Cawthon's little nod at what the fans call the cupcake. Any little detail you can possibly think of, there's a college essay to be written about, what it is or what it means in the franchise's like fandom. Okay, this is going to be a little more, maybe you've heard of this, maybe you haven't. Why are the animatronics antagonistic? So, A, they're haunted by children who were killed in the restaurant and had their bodies shoved in the suits, so now they're seeking vengeance against people who look like their killer. B, they're haunted by children who were killed at the restaurant and had their bodies shoved into suits, but the antagonist, the murderer, can control them and are sending them to kill you. C, the strict programming of the animatronics requires that they follow the rules, which means they need to shove naked endoskeletons into suits, and they think that you are a naked endoskeleton. Or D, the events of the entire game are a nightmare, and so it doesn't need to make sense.
Okay, so this is interesting because I feel through cultural osmosis, I've kind of absorbed some vague awareness that there is something about dead children and the animatronics that is part of the lore, but this is not established in the first game. I feel like in the first game, all that we hear in terms of the animatronics motivation is, I think, the third point, right? Like, I feel like that there's one of the calls kind of says something to this effect, right? Like that he's like, oh yeah, they're kind of weird and they think that you might be one of them and they'll put you in this, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go with number 3. I feel like the other ones kind of allude to things that are revealed in subsequent games that I'm not as familiar with, but number 3 sounds very much like something one of the phone call messages says, if I can recall.
So you are completely correct in that, depending on how you look at it, these are all correct answers. So in the first game on the surface, like you said, phone guy tells us these are just normal robots and they're dangerous because they might shove you in a suit. We'll sort of learn later that they are haunted children who are seeking, who are angry at people who look like the man who killed them. In the movie, they are controlled by the murderer to come and kill people. And then it being a nightmare, that was Matpat's first ever take on FNAF. His first Five Nights at Freddy's video concluded with, the game is a nightmare, that you're the killer and you're in prison and they're coming to get you in your dreams. So all of these are correct depending on how you look at it. We're probably going to be talking about Matpat more later. I know that you're aware of him, but what's your sort of Matpat cultural osmosis as far as FNAF is concerned?
Matpat is the, but that's just a theory, a game theory guy, right? Yeah, I feel like I've probably watched a video or two of his in the day, but that's just a theory, a flag theory. Welcome Home?
The like Sesame Street thing?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, I feel like he's made some videos on that I've watched. So like, I feel like, yeah, he's big into sort of the deep dives into the lore of some of this kind of horror type content. I feel like I as a person am just not super into like really speculative kind of commentary, especially speculative commentary on media that I'm not very familiar with. So I feel like because I don't play a lot of video games and because I don't, consume a lot of, this kind of stuff in general, yeah, my interactions with him have been pretty mild, but you're sort of implying that he's a big character in sort of the FNAF subculture.
He's a huge character as far as the culture. I think that'd be a good way of putting it. The series was popular before he covered it, but in a niche internet, gamer sort of way. He really brought it to the mainstream because a lot of people who had heard of the game or had watched maybe one, their favorite Let's Player play it, it wasn't readily obvious what the story was or sort of how the rules of the world worked. And so Matpat was the first person to sort of devote, because you're a YouTuber, so you're getting paid to do this kind of nonsense, to sort of devote his time to really understanding it. And so he became like every 3 months when he released his next video, it was like, oh, I've been mulling over what this game is about since I watched Markiplier play it. Now I'm going to go actually learn what it is from Matpat. So he's really become like the Five Nights at Freddy's guy.
Who is here? Let me ask you a question. Who is more influential in terms of sort of mainstreaming FNAF? Would you say it was Matpat or would you say it was Markiplier? Because I know Markiplier was kind of a big shot in terms of all of his Let's Plays, which I think sort of kicked off the trend of that.
As many views as Markiplier's gotten, as much as many eyes as he's gotten onto the franchise. I think because it's so the series kind of hit at the perfect right time, and because it is so enticing. No offense to Markiplier, but I think that anybody playing the game, any of the dozens of Let's Players you've ever heard of, could have become the go-to guy for watching people play through it. You know, if it wasn't Markiplier, it could have been PewDiePie. If it wasn't Markiplier or PewDiePie, it would have been some guy that me and you were too old to have even heard of. But Matpat was the person who made the story make sense to people and sort of disseminated the information beyond just, there are scary animatronics that want to kill you.
I see. Now that makes sense.
And Matpat has been in both movies, so like there's definitely that relationship there with the franchise. Yeah. He voiced one of the animatronics in the second movie, and in the first movie, he made a cameo as a waiter who he kind of like walks up to the table, and he's like, "Hey guys, lunch is the most important meal of the day." And they're like, "Isn't it breakfast? Isn't that the saying?" And he goes, "Well, some people say that, but you know, it's just a theory." And then everyone claps. That is
standing
a
ovation in the
yes.
theater, I'm sure. Yes.
He's become very friendly with Scott Cawthon because of their
That's interesting.
Antagonistic relationship over the games. Yeah, so this is basically what I was just saying. Everyone has theories. Very few things are confirmed in the franchise. There are people to this day. People to this day who don't believe that there are ghosts. They're wrong, but they believe that.
Okay.
So I'd say most people's current understanding is that the animatronics are haunted by children who disappeared in the restaurant. So the story that we sort of learn via newspapers in the first game, you can read these newspaper snippets that sort of appear on the wall, but only like 1 in every 10 times you click on that camera do they appear. Ooh. And it's like 5 kids have disappeared. And then it says the police have searched the building and could not find them. And then it says parents are complaining that the animatronics have blood leaking from them. I wonder what that's about. They smell like corpses. And so you can put together that the murderer hid the bodies into the animatronic suits, and that's why they were never found. And also that's why they're haunted. Every FNAF video or anything you'll ever see will call this the MCI, which is the Missing Children's Incident. So if you're ever engaging with FNAF and someone's just like, yeah, well, so it was actually after the MCI, and we know that because this animatronic's already haunted. MCI is when 5 kids were murdered in the restaurant, shoved into the suits became haunted, and no one knows who did it or why.
That's remarkable that there would still be a lack of closure on these sort of fundamental questions after so many games and so many books and all of the other kind of stuff that you spend all your time talking about. Like that this very core question of like what exactly the animatronic monsters even are is still like, that's remarkable that they could keep that ambiguity going for so long.
That's why there's so much space for FNAF theorists on YouTube. Because there are almost no answers. And so if YouTuber A goes off on one assumption, then these building blocks will create a very different interpretation of the series than YouTuber B, whose building block assumptions make a very, very different viewpoint of the series. But yes, no, as we go, everything that I tell you is going to be like a little asterisk that just goes, we think this is how it works, but we're not entirely sure.
Are you a mainstream are your personal theories on this? Are you part of like the consensus mainstream, or are you within this subculture like a radical who has your own sort of eccentric takes that are perhaps divisive and controversial?
Great question. So I have 2 views that are well outside the norm. But everything we use the term community consensus to refer to like, we think this is true, but also we're all aware that it's not. It's built on faulty Jenga tower logic that isn't fully backed up. One of the things that really separates me from most of the other YouTubers is my interpretation of who an orange pixel man is in a bonus Easter egg minigame in the 6th FNAF game. And so just having that difference of opinion on who the orange man is separates me off from all the other YouTubers. Like that's the level we're at.
Yeah, you're sort of like a breakaway sort of splinter faction. It's kind of like a religion that keeps, you know, sort of.
There's
that's fun.
There's one character who we don't know their name, And there's lots of different theories about what their name is. Some people think his name is Dave, and some people think his name is Evan. And so we call the Evan people like evangelicals, because like they still believe his name is Evan after all these years, even though it's been like, you know, contradicted. So yes, viewing it as like, you know, splintering religions is very common in in the fandom.
What was the other name? The
Dave.
Evan, or what was the other one?
Dave.
Okay, so Dave. So then there's also a branch of Davidians.
Yes,
right?
yeah. A branch of Davidians. Ha ha ha. I get it. It took a second. Okay. Okay, so we're now at the end of Five Nights at Freddy's 1. I'm going to do a little little summary. So on the bottom left there, they can't see it. I need to resize your little box. Bottom left there, we see a clip from Markiplier.
Yes.
Do you know what Markiplier is reacting to right there? Who that little guy is on the camera? Might be too small for you.
Well, I mean, hold on. It looks like he's just reacting to just standard scenes where the monsters just jump at him.
So the monsters' faces are flashing at him, but it's because a strange yellow-colored animatronic is in the office with him, which shouldn't be possible.
Golden Freddy, right?
Golden Freddy, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I know this. Yeah.
It's perfect. That's one of the, again, cultural osmosis stuff. You know, what do you know about FNAF?
Yeah.
Animatronics, Chuck E. Cheese, Golden Freddy.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
Golden. And I'm sort of dimly aware that Golden Freddy is like, special, as golden things tend to be. Like, he's not one of the mainstream characters, or, you know, you don't encounter him through normal playthrough, only by doing something particular.
Exactly. So this is kind of my little, like, why is FNAF so popular, like, theory. Were you like aware of internet horror stuff in the early 2010s? Like, do you know what Ben Drowned is? The Legend of Zelda creepypasta?
I made a whole video on sort of Zoomer creepypasta type stuff. So I feel like I've educated myself into what all of those things are. You know, Slender Man and Ben Drowned and Smile Dog and all this sort of thing.
You know, Ben Drowned was probably the most popular piece of you know, internet mythology that existed around that time. And so Five Nights at Freddy's being a game where on one level we're told the animatronics are hostile because they think you're an endoskeleton, and so that's why they're evil. And then you dig a little deeper, and it's actually that they're haunted by these murdered children. And then something happens in the game that doesn't seem to be part of the actual narrative. So Golden Freddy appearing in your office, and words, it says, "It's me." I don't know if you can read it, but "It's me" is flashing on the screen whenever you see Golden Freddy. It's almost as if the game that you're playing is haunted. It's almost a Ben Drowned scenario where you're playing a horror game, but now it can see you. It's flashing eyeballs right into the screen. Characters are behaving in ways that they're not supposed to. And so this added a layer of horror at the time that people were very interested in, because you're not just solving this little mystery about what's going on in the narrative. There's this sort of meta-narrative angle to it that made Markiplier scream and get very scared, because, as he's saying, this is not supposed to be possible within the confines of the game. Yeah. So it's a ghost story, you know, and that's it was very popular at the time.
Very meta.
Yep.
Yeah, the game is kind of like self-aware, or it does like what the TV tropes people call like an interface screw, which like there's some of that stuff in other sort of games of the time, like Undertale has aspects of that, and this kind of stuff, right? Like a game that kind of screws with the player by kind of alluding to the idea that the game is sort of self-aware or haunted or has, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, I didn't know that was a part of FNAF, because I've only played it in a very sort of standard kind of way. But yeah, that tracks with the culture of the time.
It was, I think that this is lost on people who are sort of entering the franchise later, especially since it's been like merchandised through the wazoo, and now there's like Hollywood movies, where Golden Freddy is a marketable character. You know, you can buy a Golden Freddy Funko Pop. You can go to the movie, and Golden Freddy is played by an actual actor. There's like a little child who's like, "I'm Golden Freddy." So you sort of lose the fact that when the game first came out, he wasn't supposed to exist. He is almost presented as a glitch or an error. If you stare at him, then the game crashes, right? Again, that's sort of a meta interacting with the real world aspect to this character who's again, your game is the thing that's haunted, not something scary happening in the game. And so whenever I tell people about the franchise, I'm always like, you got to understand, in 2014, this was the scariest thing anyone's ever heard of. I know you can go and buy a plushie of him now, but he's supposed to be like this entity that can reach through the screen and get you.
Yeah. And I feel like that's, there's something about that then gets lost when, like you say, like, the franchise expands and balloons and becomes very merchandised and develops all of this lore. The ambiguity that sort of defines the first entry in a series can be kind of very sort of special, and and you kind of miss that magic, which you can only sort of ever experience once. And then, like, there kind of becomes a sort of sense that in the same way that, like, when a joke is explained, it becomes less funny. In some ways, like, when a kind of a horrific sort of thing is explained, it kind of becomes less scary and less creepy, because that ambiguity is a big part of the horror aspect. But when it's instead just becomes part of this very rich lore with a million backstories and explanations and wiki articles deconstructing it, like, in some ways a bit of the magic is, I think, lost, but, something else is gained too, obviously.
Yeah, it's the same thing when a horror franchise hits its, like, 6th or 7th movie. You have, like, oh, now we know that Freddy Krueger's powers come from these sleep demons, and to defeat him, if you kill him, then the demons get really, like, the first entry is just this inexplicable thing that you can't stop and is going to kill you. After many movies, you're like, I know who his mother is, I know what happened when he was a child, I know his motivations, he had a daughter, it's just, it stops being the same sort of thing once more information is told about the monster.
I think an analogy is like Terminator, right? Like, I remember when I watched the first Terminator movie, like, I found it, like, very scary and very affecting, right? Because there is this, like, huge amount of ambiguity about, like, what is the Terminator? Why does he care about Sarah Connor? And, like, that kind of stuff. And of course, now we know that there's this whole very elaborate backstory of where Terminators come from and all this kind of stuff. And FNAF kind of reminds me of that in a similar sort of way. Like, the first game is just about a scary situation in which weird Chuck E. Cheese robots are trying to kill you for some unspecified reason. But now it's, of course, something much more richer and detailed, which is not to sort of take away from that, because, rich lore is interesting and stimulating. Obviously, you and your fans are very into this kind of stuff. But there is still something lost. It comes at a certain price.
Yeah, I would also say that, I was in college when the first game came out. And I was born in the 90s, so I have this experience with Chuck E. Cheese. I went to Chuck E. Cheese in the 90s. I was scared of the animatronics before they gave them, like, a facelift in the 2000s. Most locations don't have any animatronics at all, but the ones that do, they look much friendlier. And so when the game came out, I saw it as what it is, which is a satire of 90s era Chuck E. Cheese with the scary animatronics. And you're kind of like, if I was the security guard there and I had to be the last one alone in the building and do a sweep in the dark with my flashlight, would I get it in the back of my mind that maybe this thing will move its eyes and watch me? Maybe it'll bite me if I get too close? Like, that appealed to me as someone who grew up with it. But a lot of my YouTuber friends, they're all like 20, 21. They're like, I grew up with it. I was 7 years old when the first game came out. It was my childhood. And they've never been to a Chuck E. Cheese, and they've never seen an animatronic. And they sort of see FNAF as its own universe with its own rules, whereas I'm able to still see it as, like, this is still a pastiche of Chuck E. Cheese. This is still a satire. This is still, supposed to be a real thing. And so I do think that gets lost on people younger than me, I guess.
Do you think, sorry to just keep this conversation going, but do you think that, like, as the series has progressed, like, it has kind of lost that kind of satirical edge a bit? Like, that the world of FNAF no longer kind of, like, feels inspired by sort of the real world Chuck E. Cheese and real world sort of pizza parlors and things of that era. And it's instead just, like, very sort of self-referential. It's a very self-contained universe that has its own logic and its own, kind of stuff to it that isn't really analogous to anything that exists in actual America.
So yes and no. As we will continue to discover, there are so few things that we have answers to that it's kind of hard to hammer down anything. But we'll learn when we go to the second FNAF game that it's more inspired by Chuck E. Cheese than you think. The guy who invented Chuck E. Cheese is named Nolan Bushnell, And before Chuck E. Cheese, he was the founder of Atari.
Oh.
So
yeah.
he loved Disney animatronics, and so he kind of wanted to bring that to the small town restaurant. And he saw it as an excuse to put Atari games in an arcade. You come to see the animatronics, which is his real passion, and then you also spend money on Atari games. And so it was the marriage of video games and animatronics that created Chuck E. Cheese. And there's a character in FNAF who's basically a one-to-one with Nolan Bushnell. He's the founder, who we're going to meet in the next game. So sort of knowing Chuck E. Cheese history information is very important. So I definitely think that they're still taking inspiration from animatronic chain family restaurants, but it definitely doesn't look like that anymore.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's there's a lot. Like I said, we're trying to just do surface level. And that's 4 layers down. That's deep speculation. Opening actual textbooks to try to learn this stuff.
All right, let's get back to it.
Okay, yeah. So miscellaneous facts from FNAF 1. The phone guy monologues, who, as you knew, were recorded by Scott Cawthan, are dark comedy satire about corporations and middle management. So he's like, "Oh, I need to read you off, just the company policy. If we discover that you died, we'll lie and say that you just went missing, and we'll clean the carpets. Like, haha, it's funny. Corporations don't care about their employees. Haha, Amazon." We talked about the newspapers a little bit, but there's an example of it in the middle of the page here. You probably can't read it, but it says, local pizzeria Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has been threatened again with shutdowns over health department concerns of foul odor coming from the much-loved animal mascots. Police were contacted when parents reportedly noticed what appeared to be blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the mascot. One parent likened them to reanimated carcasses. Very, very subtle indications that the children's bodies were put in the suits. But those newspapers are really the main way that we got information from the first game. There's only 4 animatronics that are mentioned. That's Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica. But we can find Golden Freddy in the game. And if you look at him, the game crashes. So again, it's supposed to be like, ooh, there's a 5th scary one, and he's gonna do something to you. At the end of the game, we get our paycheck, and we learn that our name is Mike Schmidt. He ends up getting fired at the end of the week. And we see the date on his check. It says 11/12/XX. So we know the game takes place the week of November 11th, but we don't know what year. He gets paid $120, so you can sort of backwards engineer based on minimum wage that this is taking place in the early 90s, but we don't know the year. And the phone guy drew attention to the bite of 87, something that happened in the past that caused the animatronics to not be allowed to walk around during the day. These were the takeaways between the first and the second game that people were focusing on. And this is really all we had to go with. And this is the simplest it will ever be.
Yes.
Do you have any questions, comments, concerned about what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I definitely remember the bite of 87. I remember, I'm aware of this because I remember it when I played the game. That, he kind of mentions it in this kind of casual way. It's kind of like a joke, right? It's ever since the bite of 87. And that's a kind of very familiar sort of comedy pull, the bite of 87. It's like, the noodle incident. That's another sort of thing that, right? It's a comedy pull that you refer to something that alludes to I don't know, something very bizarre and weird and possibly terrifying and horrific. But you just kind of refer to it in this very sort of casual way that then invites, your imagination fills in the gaps, and it can be as sort of grotesque and horrifying as your imagination can make it. And from what I understand is that because that was one of the, that was a small sort of hint at a kind of lore in the first game. And so as a result, the bite of 87 has subsequently been seized on and, theory. And I don't know if it's actually disclosed what it is in some later media. But I think it's an interesting example of how something that's kind of a throwaway line or a joke or something that's intentionally not meant to be kind of fully understood, as media expands, it has to be understood. And it sort of achieves a kind of much more sort of significance in sort of the canon than it was intended to. And I'm aware of the bite of 87 sort of fulfilling that role.
You hit the nail right on the head. It's, it's hard to explain this to people who either entered the franchise later or were children when it came out, that this is not a dangling plot thread with deep lore. It's a joke.
Yeah.
Scott Cawthon did not intend for there to be more games after this. So for him, yeah, like you said, it's alluding to something, and it makes you go, oh no, what is that? My imagination's running wild.
Yeah.
But then as future games come out, and we will see the Bite of 87, it sort of demystifies it, and it turns it from a joke into a piece of evidence. And I definitely like maintaining the satire of the series. The series is very funny. It's also obviously dark because there's children's bodies shoved into suits. But I love maintaining, like, this is happening because it's supposed to be scary, and this is happening because it's dark humor, not here are pieces of evidence that are in the game because they're puzzle pieces that the creator wanted us to solve. It's like, no, I love focusing on that. And you immediately understood what that was, and a lot of newer fans don't. I think that's just a thing that comes with age.
It's a very classic, like I said, like it's a very classic comedy pull, even the way it's formulated, right? Like the something of, a year, right? I remember Jonathan Colton, you know him, like the comedy musician, like he has like a Christmas song where there's like, it's like a premise is that like the family fights a lot at Christmas or something, and then there's like a line where it's like, I forget what they say, it's something like, the infamous gravy boat incident of like 97 or something, right? Like that formation, like where you refer to kind of like in some ways a kind of like trivial incident or an infamous incident within the lore of like a family or a community with this very kind of like exalted sort of formation, as if it's something like, like a horrible like historical atrocity, right? Like or some other sort of like big historic event that we would refer to in this kind of hushed way with a specific date associated with it. Like the bombing of 93 or whatever, right? No, it's like the incident of this or like the bite of 87, because it's in the context of something like as small as like a pizza parlor. Like the idea that they would refer to it in this like grand way is, that is part of the joke. It sort of implies a kind of self-seriousness of the Five Nights at Freddy's, which I feel like in the context of the first game is kind of established as being a kind of crummy place. Like it's run down, it's not popular, people don't really like it, it's not really that important. So to kind of refer to an incident in its own history in this kind of pompous way is, that's a big part of the humor, as opposed to, like what you're saying, what it sounds like it subsequently became, which was like, this very important canonical incident in this very elaborate backstory.
Yeah, there's the exact same joke in a SpongeBob episode where they talk about this incident that happened at a Christmas party, and it's never elaborated what it is, but the characters act like they know it. The show Scrubs, there's an ongoing joke that something happened at a pool party, and again, no indication of what it was or who was involved, but they're like, hey, I told you after the incident at the pool party to never bring that up again. It's just this running joke. And one of the things I always say I'm one of the older people who make FNAF content on YouTube, and so one of the things I kind of always talk to the younger people about, I don't know how to say that without sounding like patronizing, is a lot of people who love Five Nights at Freddy's really only know Five Nights at Freddy's. And so when it does things like reference a classic joke that you'd see in long-running TV shows, they don't get the era that it was made in. They don't get the joke. They don't get the reference. They didn't grow up with Chuck E. Cheese. They don't know. They never read Frankenstein. They don't know these sort of things that the game is in conversation with culturally, which is why I've sort of made my channel to educate. Again, don't know how to say that without being patronizing, but to educate people and be like, oh, when this happens, it is in conversation or a reference to this other thing that was going on in culture at the time, or that the creator would have grown up with, etc.
No, which I think is respectable.
You got it. I'm very very happy that I'm not like the crazy one.
Well, it's because I'm even older than you, right? Like what year were you born?
96. I'll be 30 in like a couple weeks.
Okay, and then I was born in 84, right? So we're kind of like two different generations, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, but then everyone else who I work with, like there's people who were born in the late 2000s who I'm working with, and they're just a very, very different generational things. Not to like get way off topic, but I feel like you know, if I'm a younger millennial and you're like an older millennial, we still sort of had similar culture. Like, you know, we both, I mean, I know you watch The Simpsons. I still watch The Simpsons to this day.
Yeah.
Like, I love that.
Yeah.
That's one of the bigger cultural touchstones. And I feel like social media, pre-iPhone eras of growing up and like 90s Nintendo games before graphics went 3D, like that's stuff that I also grew up with. And I think that that's just a very different world compared to sort of the everyone's always online, you have a computer in your pocket. Time seemed to like stop when people started watching streaming media as opposed to gathering around the television all day. The 24-hour news cycle. Like, I remember before 9/11, not to like throw that into a FNAF video.
Yeah.
But I do feel like even if you're 12 years older than me, I do feel sort of more part of your generation than I do part of the people who are currently 18.
Well, it is interesting, and this is sort of something that I think about a lot as well, is because when you're born into a generation, like, you're not sort of hermetically sealed from everything that came previously, right?
Yes.
So it's like, there is, like, when I see like Gen X nostalgia stuff, like, I often feel like I can relate to that too, because I feel like when I was a kid in the 80s, like, there was still a lot of like 70s stuff around me, right? And so like, there's a certain cultural familiarity that I have with it, or even affinity for like some 70s stuff, even though I didn't directly experience it when it was first created, just because it was hanging around. Like, there was a kind of like, shadow of the previous decade, right? And I feel like guys like you that were born in sort of like the mid to late 90s, right? Like, you're still dealing with the kind of the shadow of kind of late 80s, early 90s stuff. It's still very much around you, so you're fluent in it, right? You weren't born completely cut off from all that came prior, right? So no, it's true. And I'm sure I feel this way. Like, when I'm hanging out with other millennials, I sometimes feel a little more Gen X. When I'm hanging around with, Zoomers, I feel very millennial, right? Like, I'm sure you have a similar kind of thing.
Again, like, me and an 18-year-old would be the same age gap as you and I feel like I'm constantly having to talk to them about like the world in which FNAF was created and the way that it was in conversation with the things that were going on at the time. And that's just this giant barrier. Forget all of the incredibly minimalistic ways that the lore is explained to us and the little details we get. Explaining to someone like, no, that's a joke, but I understand that there's no empirical way of proving that it's a joke, but I promise you it's a joke.
Yes. And that's what cultural literacy is. It's just being able to recognize things.
All right, back to lore.
Okay.
We talked about Golden Freddy. Okay, Mike Schmidt is the security guard. It's the early 90s. Phone guy teases the budget of 87, where an employee's frontal lobe was bitten off, but they lived. That's what he says. It's like, it's incredible that you can live without your frontal lobe. It's like, haha, funny.
But even that is kind of like a bit of a joke unto itself, right? Like, he's kind of like alluding to the horror without fully explaining it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And to him, it's almost like pedestrian. It's like, oh yeah, it's crazy that you can just do that. It's fine. That stuff happens all the time. All right,
okay.
FNAF
Number
2, November 2014. So it's only been a couple months.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that quick.
FNAF 2 introduces us to around 23 new characters. Is this too many characters?
Okay. It seems like a lot. I didn't realize it was quite that many. Like, I'm aware that there was like several new ones, but I mean, like, okay, several of the 23 are just kind of like slight modifications of other ones, right? Okay, so like, if we're thinking about like the core, it's like, because you have the little chart here in the bottom, right? And like the core, there's like 10 monsters from just 4, right? So it's not that extreme.
So obviously there's no objective answer to this. You could have said either one. And this is sort of where the layers upon layers of obfuscation come in. So the second game, which we'll find out is a prequel, has Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. But I wonder if I have a picture. Yes, I do. So we have these 2 Chicas at the bottom. The one on the left is the one from the first game. The one on the right is the one from the second game. And the idea is that these are withered animatronics. They've kind of fallen into disrepair, and then they get fixed up. Yes. And so the question is, are these the same physical machines that get fixed up into the ones from FNAF 1, or are they different robots? And nobody can agree on that, because it looks incredibly different. but the gameplay narrative seems to be telling us, yeah, this just gets, it gets patched up. We kind of give her new hands, and then she's all good. Now she looks like the one on the left. And we're like, no.
Okay, hold on. So
no, actually, no.
So you're saying number 2 is you said it's a prequel to this?
Number 2 is a
this first
prequel,
one?
yes.
Okay.
And you don't find that out until the end, because the entire game is a misdirection, and it's trying to tell you that it's like, oh yeah, the old animatronics have become outdated, and they kind of broke apart in the back, and then the big twist at the end is that it's actually 1987, and the bite of 87 happens, and then the first game happens afterwards. There's a bunch of new missing kids. That's what this little thing on the bottom left is that's a dead child.
Okay.
And we see 6 dead children in the game. And so the question is, are 5 of them the same 5 from the first game? Or is this 6 new kids? Are there 6 victims, or are there 11 victims? We genuinely don't know. This little guy, I included him on the bottom right. Her, actually. Her name is JJ. I figured you'd like to know that.
Oh my. I didn't know there was a JJ.
Yes, there is.
Oh boy, that's fun.
And then at the end of the game, a character is fired for the same reason that Mike Schmidt in the first game is fired. His name is Fritz. And so people argue, is Fritz and Mike the same person? Or are they 2 different people? So that's why it's like, how many new characters are there? 23, 30, only 18? Like, we genuinely do not know if people are the same people as other characters.
Oh. Why would it be the same person? Because I feel like it feels like it shouldn't be the same person, right? Because if it's a prequel, it's sort of setting up the premise that, the guy is fired and then Mike is hired to replace him, right?
So it would be, this guy's fired, the phone guy takes over, he retires,
okay.
and then Mike takes his spot,
Okay.
5 years later.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And it's one of the things that to this day, it's like, if you think Mike and Fritz are the same person, your timeline's going to go in a very different direction than if they're not, and it's just something that we don't know, and so you just need to pick one and move on. But yeah, so it's one of the, if after this you decide, I'm going to go watch some Five Nights at Freddy's videos, people will just assume that you understand that Fritz and Mike are the same person, or aren't the same person.
Really?
And it's what makes the story so complex to enter from the outside. Not only are there a lot of characters, we don't know if some are the same characters as others. And we're only in the second game. So which one of these is the odd one out?
Okay, you need to explain something to me, because this is
Sure.
a big gap in my FNAF knowledge at this point. So, okay, you can see I even have actually a little toy of the Pixel
Yep.
Freddy.
That's Cake Bear.
Okay.
Cake
Well,
Bear.
so I'm very dimly aware that I
Mhm.
guess in the second game, this premise that there's like video game people or
Yes.
something, like these 8-bit graphics become a big part of the game. I don't really know how this fits in. Can you explain this
Okay.
to me? Like, why are there suddenly video game people? How does that manifest?
So, perfect, call back to what we were talking about. There's a character in the game who we will eventually learn his name is Henry, but right now we have no idea who this person is. It's just that we know that there's an entity who exists who's sort of the founder of the restaurant, which
Okay.
also is what makes it so difficult, is because we don't have this character's name for 5 years. How do we talk about him if he doesn't have a name?
Yeah.
So Henry is the fictional Nolan K. Bushnell. He's the fictional, I founded Atari, I founded Chuck E. Cheese. So in universe, he makes video games, and he made the restaurant. I think I'm wearing, I don't know if you can read it, but my hat, this is a hat that I made on my merch store. It says Henrendo, so it's Henry and Nintendo, haha. So in FNAF 2, when you die, there's a chance that you'll just be thrown into an 8-bit minigame that looks like an Atari game. And we'll cover those in a later question. But those are where a lot of the lore is shown. So we'll see this purple guy, his name is Purple Guy, walk up to a child. The child becomes grayed out with these tear streaks going down their face. And so that's the implication that the purple guy just killed this kid, because now they're a body. And so a lot of the background lore we learn is from these incredibly abstract and minimalistic 8-bit video games that you get if you die while playing the main game, which is also explaining lore via the phone guy's phone calls, and sometimes you need to read posters that are on the wall.
Do you play the 8-bit thing, or is it just like a little animation that shows?
You play the game.
Okay. And what is the
So-
objective of the game?
I will walk you through those when I have more visual things on screen.
Okay.
But so one of the games is called, there's little instructions on the bottom. It says, take cake to the children. And so you play as the little guy that you have. And there's these rows of children, and you're supposed to walk up to them and deliver cake to them. And they get redder and redder as they get angrier and angrier without their cake. And so it's sort of like a time limit thing. How many kids can you feed? And you're enclosed within this box. And so that box stands for the restaurant, and it's also the play field of the arcade game. And outside the box is a child who's actively crying. And then you see a purple car roll up, and purple guy get out of his car, and then the child turns into this gray, crying, dead child, and then the car speeds away. So while you're playing this minigame about scoring points, you can see that what literally happened is outside the restaurant, a child who got locked out was killed by the purple guy.
I see.
Yes.
In the answer to the quiz, I know just from sort of seeing, pictures and so forth, that four is the correct one, right?
4 is, so all 4 of these are real guys from in-game. One of these is an odd one out for a specific reason.
Oh, is that so? Okay.
Yes.
Well, maybe I was wrong then. I thought, I feel like the 4 one is one that I've seen.
You probably have.
But I guess if they're all in the game, why would I seen the 4 one and not the other 3?
He is one of the more in-depth mini games, and again we'll cover these in a couple minutes. But he's one that Matpat likes to use.
Okay, I feel like maybe number 3 is the odd one out. It looks the weirdest.
Is that your final answer? You're gonna lock in?
Yeah, I'll try that one.
All right, so you're correct.
Okay.
So here's all the examples of the minigames.
Okay.
So the murderer, we call him Purple Guy. He's purple. We see him across different minigames in FNAF 2 when you die. He's purple because it's an abstract representation of a character in an arcade minigame. The character's not literally purple. He's purple because purple is the color of evil, like Maleficent or the Green Goblin's green and purple. Purple's just bad guy. Waluigi, exactly.
Yeah.
If we go back a slide, so he's kind of pink-ish on the top left, and we don't know why. Scott just made him pink in one game, and we sort of think that this is not for any particular reason, so that's sort of not lore important. The odd one out was the protagonist of FNAF 5, which we'll get to, in which he is dying, so his body's decaying, and he's getting all beaten and bruised up. So the guy, number 3, is literally purple in that his body is beaten and bruised, whereas the other 3 are just sort of represented as being purple because purple is a color of evil. So we'll talk more about him later. But if you can see these 3 examples on the bottom of these minigames, the first one is you play as Foxy, and you're supposed to run as fast as you can down a hallway, and the purple guy is grinning in the corner, and when you get to the end of the hallway, you find a bunch of dead kids. The middle one is the one where the kids are turning angry, and your little bear goes and feeds them cupcakes, and then the purple guy in his car rolls up outside and kills a child outside. And then the one on the right is the most complicated one, where you're walking around an 8-bit representation of the FNAF 2 pizzeria. And the purple guy will chase after you, and you're supposed to run away from him. And there's no objective to the game. There's a voice that is spelling out, "Save them." And if you run around, you can find bodies lying all over the restaurant. And when Purple Guy eventually catches you, which he definitely will, the voice then changes to say, "You can't."
Dark.
Very dark.
But you would never see this if you were playing the game well. Is that what you were saying?
The chances of never dying is 0. Like, you're going to die when you play the game. Yeah.
Not if I watch like a perfect Let's Play, though, right?
That is true. If you watch a flawless walkthrough of the game, you will not see these. You only see these if you die.
Yeah. But since, normal people would die, certainly the first few times they play the game, you will inevitably be exposed to this stuff, and probably all of the games, because people will die at least 3 times, right?
It gets much more complicated how you find these lore mini games as we go. In this one, it's simple because if you die, you see them, and so you'll almost certainly see them.
Do they make toys of the purple guy?
There's plushes. I think there's plushes, or there's t-shirts and stuff. I've never seen. There's like an off-brand Lego that they make of the FNAF characters, and yeah, there's plushes and there's other things. I guess them depicting a character who's literally just a child murderer and selling it to kids is sort of like why they wouldn't do that. Like, oh, here's Freddy, I love Freddy. Here's Chica, I love Chica.
Yeah.
Here's the murderer. So I'm not aware of them.
When he's depicted in extended lore, is he always depicted as a pixel man, or does he eventually get a more? I mean, I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of ourselves now, but is he eventually depicted in a? Yeah,
We will definitely
we'll see that
get there.
later.
We will get there.
Okay. Okay.
He's played by Matthew Lillard in the movie. So there is some, I'm sure that there's Funko Pops of like Matthew Lillard's version of the character, as opposed to just like a little purple sprite. So another great example of like, we don't know anything that's going on. So we don't know who the little bear that we give the children cake with is. Like, is that Freddy? Because his hat's the wrong color if it's Freddy. So because we can't agree on who that is, we just call him Cake Bear. Because when you say Cake Bear, we know it's the bear that gives cake. Whereas if we say Freddy, we don't all agree that it's Freddy.
Interesting. This is really some in-depth fine-grained analysis. When I bought the little toy, I just assumed it was Freddy. This is how ignorant I am. I mean, it seemed self-evident to me. I mean, how many bears can there be, right?
So many bears. So many bears, and only half of them are named Freddy. Keep in mind, this is still surface level stuff. We're actually only talking about surface level stuff.
We're still only on we're not even on the top of the iceberg. We're still in the sky, right?
Yeah, we're in the sky, maybe the tip of the iceberg for just things that you will see in the game.
Okay.
All right, next question. What's so special about the puppet? Have you ever seen the puppet before? Are you aware this person exists?
I'm aware of the puppet. Yeah, we're still in the realm where I'm familiar with these characters. What do I know about the puppet, though? Okay, she cannot be stopped from killing you. She was the purple guy's first victim. She's the daughter of the company's founder. She's the most intelligent animatronic. I don't know. Maybe 1? I feel like it's either 1 or 4. Because I feel like the other questions kind of allude to more lore than I feel like is established in. I would assume is established in the second game based on how you've been describing it so far. So maybe 4, I would say.
So the answer is all of them. So in the second game alone, when the purple guy kills the person outside the building, the minigame ends with the puppet jump scaring you. And so this allowed people to use their big brains and go, oh, I bet this murder we just saw was the creation of the puppet. Ooh. We will go on to find that the puppet is the daughter of Henry, the guy we keep talking about. And the gameplay of the game is that the puppet can't be stopped. You have to satiate it by winding a music box because the lullaby puts it to sleep. But if you don't wind it, then it will kill you. Phone Guy also tells us, like, oh, the animatronics, don't worry about them. They're just mindless robots. But I don't like that puppet thing because it always seems like it's plotting something. It's always thinking. So for some reason that to this day we still don't know, the puppet is sort of aware of who she is. She's sort of aware, my name was Charlie and I'm the daughter of the founder. But we don't know why that is. So the puppet is very enigmatic.
Is the puppet Phone Guy?
The puppet, so at this point in the series, this is 87, the puppet's already active, and Phone Guy is still alive, giving us all of our lore, all of our instructions, because he doesn't die until the first game, which is after the second game.
Yeah.
So the Phone Guy is not puppet.
Okay, I once saw, the reason why I ask is because I remember I once saw, there's quite a good, animation on YouTube. Like, somebody made an animation of, Five Nights at Freddy's if it was the game Cuphead. It's animated. It's quite well done. And but anyway, so the character is fighting the FNAF monsters in a sort of Cuphead type fashion. And then at one point he's fighting like the puppet, who's like the boss, and the puppet is like on the phone, like she's talking on the telephone, and that's like part of her sort of animation cycle. And that's why I was wondering if that is a reference to something, like that a FNAF fan sees the puppet talking on the phone and that sort of means something.
No, I don't know what that would mean. There might be other sort of smaller things like going on in that animation that would sort of combine into a reference. But no, the puppet is not related to Phone Guy.
And not related to phones at all?
Not related to phones at all.
Oh, interesting. That's an odd thing. Then I'll have to show you this later, and you can deconstruct it for me.
I will look into it. All right, so we're now at the end of FNAF 2, so we're going to go over some miscellaneous facts. So the game is a prequel set in 1987, and it's telling the story of the Bite of 87. Because when you only have one dangling plot thread from your first game, you go to your second game, and you're like, well, I better fill that in. Yeah. So we play a guy named Jeremy. Jeremy is working as the night guard at the FNAF 2 location. And at the end of the week, Phone Guy tells him, like, hey, can you come in tomorrow morning for the day shift? The animatronics are acting a bit weird. There's a birthday party. So I want you to stand really, really close to the animatronics to make sure nothing bad happens. And then it cuts to his check, which says 11/12/87. And so you realize that Jeremy was just Bite of 87 during that bonus party, and that he is the guy who lost his frontal lobe. Big lore reveal there.
Yes.
All the games have, so it says 5 Nights at Freddy's, obviously, but they'll have 6 or 7 nights, which are just bonus nights that get harder and harder. The 7th night is when we play as Fritz, the guy who many people think is Mike. And he plays that one day, and then he gets fired, and people are like, oh, Fritz is a pseudonym for Mike. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But technically, FNAF 2 has 2 protagonists, Jeremy, the Bite of 87 victim, and Fritz.
So hold on, I'm just trying to get the sequence of this.
Sure thing.
Correct.
Sure thing.
You start as Jeremy.
Yes.
And then when you beat the game, that's like Jeremy's dead.
Yep.
So then you play as Fritz, but you didn't. I thought you just beat the game.
So when you beat the game, you unlock bonus mode, which is all of the animatronics at max. Yes, at max power, and that's as Fritz.
Okay, I see.
Yes,
I see. And then Fritz is presumably replaced by Phone Guy, who's replaced by Mike.
Yes, who might be Fritz.
Why would he be Fritz, though? Or why would he be Mike? I don't like that theory. Like, why would he have a different name? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Well, we'll reevaluate whether you think it makes sense when we get a little further in the series.
All right.
One of the interesting things about FNAF is, as much as right now, there's factual things to talk about. Who was the first murder victim? Yes. What's going on? What year is stuff taking place? It's not until the end of the 5th game that we have characters. That we have characters who make decisions and go through arcs and like have lasting repercussions of the things that they do. So there's literally 5 games worth of, I'm just kind of playing it because it's scary and Matpat will tell me what's happening. FNAF 5 is when we're like, I like this character. Okay.
I get it.
The game introduces the 8-bit Atari style minigames. There's a reference to Chuck E. Cheese and Nolan Bushnell. The MCI, the missing children, happened at a Freddy's restaurant. Those murders caused it to close down. So FNAF 2 is the grand reopening. The Bite of 87 causes it to close down. And then FNAF 1 is the 3rd Freddy's location that we play as. And then at the end of the game, it says, no one comes here anymore. We're going out of business. We're closing down.
Yes. Okay.
So the FNAF
1 is
3. Yes.
And then the first location is never seen. It's just
never
kind of
seen.
The backstory.
To this day, never seen.
Oh, see, this is already sort of establishing that sort of Freddy's Pizzeria or whatever it's called is a much more kind of grand operation. Whereas I feel like in the first game, as a sort of standalone, it almost kind of feels like this is just a kind of crummy, one-off kind of, place.
Yeah,
But
local oddity attraction.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's are there, in like the second game, in sort of like the setting, are there arcade machines in the pizzeria that you can see that sort of then allude to this idea that these games actually exist and that this is, you can't.
Yes.
Okay, that's
so. I only started covering FNAF about 2 years ago. I was the first person to ever go, I wonder if the arcade machines we see in the game are literally the ones where you play these minigames on. So that's kind of like my claim to fame as going like, what if the arcade machines are haunted the way that the animatronics are haunted? So you're playing a real game, and then because ghost magic, it's sort of infected by the horrors, the murder sort of imprinted on the arcade machine itself. So I view them as more diegetic than they'd previously been viewed. And so because FNAF 2 was so confusing, this is when Matpat really, became the only person to explain what's going on.
Oh, yes. And, okay, before we get to FNAF 3.
Yep.
There are more animatronics in FNAF 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's JJ and the balloon boy and all of these other sorts of things, the puppet and that. Why are they not in FNAF 1? Are they just like relics of the closed down location that they just didn't bother to bring to the new location?
So as best as we understand it, the location, the first location where the children get murdered, only had the classic animatronics. Bodies are shoved in there, they become haunted. FNAF 2 opens, and they introduce what are called the toy animatronics. If I'll go back to the little diagram.
Yes.
And the idea is that they're more high-tech, they're less scary, and they're supposed to be connected to a criminal database so that if a kidnapper or murderer comes in the building, they can detect that and alert people. Okay. So in-universe, they are security systems. The implication is that one of them did the bite of 87, because at the end of the game, it says that the toys are all being scrapped, and they're going to fix up the withered ones to then go on and be the ones we know from FNAF 1. So all those characters get scrapped. We have no idea what happens to the puppet or Balloon Boy or JJ. But we'll get little implications about their fate later. I didn't mention, it's not, again, we're kind of trying to say surface level. It's already, I can already see you being like, oh my God, we're only 2/6 of the way through.
I'm taking notes
yes,
to keep track of this.
Which is good, you should.
Yes.
These guys up here, these are called the Shadow Animatronics. We don't know anything about them to this day. This is Golden Freddy, but he's all black, and this is Bonnie, but he's all black, and we don't know what they are.
Okay.
They can just kind of appear on your camera, almost like continuing the idea that like the game itself is haunted. There's stuff popping up in your peripheral vision that's not supposed to be there. They're just black scary versions of characters. And we don't know what their deal is.
And there is Mangle as well, which I see on the chart, and I feel like I'm sort of dimly aware of this character who is a sort of like head attached to a bunch of like sort of wiry tentacle type of things. Like that it's a sort of, I don't know, abomination of some sort, right? Like a piece made of like discarded bits of animatronics or something like that.
So Mangle is the toy variant of Foxy, and the idea is that they wanted kids to play with the toy and take it apart and put it back together. And the sort of the horror of the situation, it's almost like a Toy Story, one thing where the mean kid, tears his toys apart and then puts them together in abomination ways. It's like, kids can be so cruel in trying to put it back together. So now it's just this misformed lump of endoskeleton bones and wires and stuff.
I see.
And so it's called Mangle because it's all mangled. And the other, I think, culturally important aspect about Mangle is that in the game, they refer to, like, Phone Guy calls Mangle a he, like uses he, him pronouns.
Yeah.
But there's a special mode you can play that's called Ladies' Night. And so only Chica, Toy Chica, and, like, Mangle are active. And so it's like, oh, well, the game is saying that Mangle is both male and female. So, like, what is it? And at the time, this is in 2014, so I'm sure you can imagine the gender debates that were going on the internet when people were trying to figure out what Mangle's pronouns were. And
of course,
Scott was asked directly, like, is this a mistake? What did you intend? Is Mangle male or female? And Scott just says yes. The answer to Mangle's gender is yes.
Okay, classic. Yeah.
So that's the, Mangle's the non-binary animatronic.
How come JJ's not on the little chart?
So JJ, kind of like Golden Freddy, is an Easter egg character, where
Okay.
if you're looking around your office, you're looking at your cameras, you're trying to, you're shining your flashlight underneath your desk, and I'm talking a very, very small, like, portion of the screen, JJ's face can just pop up. And if you look away and look back, then she's gone. So she's just one of those, like, oh, you think you saw something, but did you even actually see it there? Did your mind just make up a face that's there? Or, ooh, is she dangerous? Can she get you? But she's just supposed to be, like, she's a female balloon boy, and she's just like this little Easter egg who can pop up sometimes.
I feel like I should get a toy of her since she is my name.
Yes. And so Balloon Boy is sometimes called BB, but we don't know what JJ might be short for, so the community sometimes calls her Jaloon Joy, because Balloon Boy and Jaloon Joy, you know. Duh.
Maybe the community can workshop that one a little bit more.
Okay, FNAF 3. So this is now March of 2015, a couple months later. Scott's releasing these like every 3 months. And these are not going to be multiple choice, so I'm going to see what maybe you've learned via cultural osmosis. So who is this? Who's this guy?
All right. So I'm kind of like aware that as the series progresses, the animatronics kind of get like more and more grotesque. And they have like different adjectives that come in front of them, right? And I cannot remember. I know that there is like some adjective, like it's called something Bonnie, or I assume this is Bonnie, right? I forget what the adjective is. It's I don't know if it's like mangled or destroyed or terror or something. But correct me if I'm wrong. Is it's adjective Bonnie? Is that right?
So, like in FNAF 2, there was Toy Bonnie and Withered Bonnie, and you're completely correct. Each new iteration of the band will have its little adjective. It's going to be very difficult to answer that question. So, the correct answer is that we call him Springtrap.
Okay, yeah, I've heard this word, yeah.
Springtrap is a spring lock suit, which is something that the FNAF universe created. So a spring lock is a real thing. It's just you twist a little key and it pushes the spring in, and so it can kind of activate just by twisting. And so in the canon of the universe, it's a suit where it's a full, normal functioning animatronic, and if you twist the spring lock, it moves the animatronic parts out of the way, so a human can also wear it as a mascot costume. And so in universe, the idea is that the engineer who built this is like, my show must be flawless. We can't have the kids see a robot on stage and then a man in the same costume. We must have the illusion go through that this is a real character. And so it has to be able to step off the stage and then go and talk to them and tell them happy birthday because it's now a person inside. So they make the spring lock suits.
I can see how this could go.
It goes very wrong, and if you're wearing them and they disengage, then you get crushed to death. So this guy, Springtrap, if you look very closely, it looks kind of like he has some, I don't know, some organs over here, like a human heart, maybe human eyeballs, some tendons and blood coming out of his legs. So maybe we can imagine what this guy is, why he may look like that. So the next question is, who is this? Different question.
Who is this?
Who is this?
That I don't know. Like, who is this in the sense of like the human that is whose mangled remains are inside of the suit? I don't know. My speculation would be maybe it's one of our previous heroes. I guess it can't be Jeremy because he's dead. Is it maybe Mike or Fritz? So
you guess these are one of the guards, Mike or Fritz, who might be the same person?
Yeah.
So it's a little more I guess positive than that, because this is the murderer. This is the purple guy.
Oh my.
Yes. So
purple guy was chased into a springlock suit by the ghosts of his victims. Oh, which then crushed him to death. Oh, that's nice.
He had so the 5 missing kids from the MCI. I'm going to keep like repeating some of these phrases like we're studying.
Yes.
He was able to kill them because he goes out on the main floor wearing his suit. It says, "Hey kids, come back with me. We're going to go to a special party area. Come follow your favorite character." And he takes them to the back room where there's no cameras, and then he kills them and he puts them in the suits. So it's ironic that he returns to the pizzeria. He dismantles the suits to try to hide the evidence. The ghosts of the children come and chase him to the very room where he killed them. And then he decides to run into the suit to maybe be able to scare the kids. And then the spring locks engage and he gets crushed and he dies. Or he dies.
This seems yeah, well, okay. This seems pretty explicit, but you sort of said earlier that this whole business of if the children are dead and in the suits and all of that is like unsettled, right? But you're speaking in a very sort of authoritative way about all of this. So is this just you with your theory that you're positing as if it is in fact the canonical explanation, or
I would say 99.9% of the community would agree with what I just said. It is depicted very explicitly in these little mini games that we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Where you're actually playing as the ghost and you chase him around into the suit. This is very explicit. But it's explicit in an 8-bit minigame, which allows people to say the 8-bit minigames are so non-literal that there are no ghosts. So it's kind of like if you take the franchise for what it's saying, then it's very clear. If you try to abstract it and go, oh, well, sometimes there's unreliable narrators, or we only really saw that in a meta video game that was part of the game, so, like, can we even trust that? Then you can try to argue that there's no ghosts. But 99.99999% of the community think that there's ghosts. And there's ghosts in the book, and there's ghosts in the movie. So I would find that very hard to actually argue, but I have seen people do it.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I guess I can kind of see it, especially at this sort of early stage in sort of the lore building, just because, like, we don't accept that the murderer is literally like a purple like monster, right?
Yes.
Like the murderer is a human, and yet he's depicted in the game as a sort of purple monster. So there's clearly like some degree that these things are represented in a somewhat abstracted way. So I guess I could see from that perspective that, that ghosts, because ghosts is obviously a very sort of supernatural thing, and the games haven't really kind of gotten into the realm of the supernatural yet. So I could imagine why some people might be a little skeptical that there's like actual ghost spirit entities living in this universe. But yeah, if you're sort of saying that in subsequent games this is made much more explicit and literal, then yeah, I guess they've kind of lost that argument.
Yeah, I think it's really more people who don't want there to be ghosts, and so they're able to use this and just say, oh, that's not real, that's just a mini game.
Yeah.
So this, I think you might actually have a little easier time answering, based on a previous answer you gave. Who are these yellow fellas?
Well, this is Freddy and Bonnie. Are these them in the Springtrap versions of themselves? In happier times?
You are completely correct. This is Golden Freddy and Spring Bonnie. Springtrap is sort of an out-of-universe name. It's the one that the game uses and the ones that all the Funko Pops will use. But in universe, the characters would know this guy as Spring Bonnie. So these are older suits. They're Springlock suits from before the 5 children were murdered. This is back when the purple guy and Henry were like the only people working at the restaurant. So these were like their characters. Henry went out in the bear costume, and the murderer purple guy went out in the rabbit costume, and they were constantly iterating on their inventions and entertaining the kids, and it's all for the kids. But we don't know why one of them turned to murder. Ooh, maybe we'll find out. Purple guy used the Spring Bonnie suit to lure kids to the back, killed them. Decades later, the ghosts then trapped him in the suit, and it killed him, which is irony. And the reason that Golden Freddy is in this slouched over position is because he's a Springlock suit, and the Springlocks have been engaged, so he doesn't have an endoskeleton. It's pulled back, so he's sort of like, if you see a baseball mascot costume just slumped in the corner, he can't move because the endoskeleton is pushed out of place.
So you said earlier that it would be kind of distasteful if they made sort of toys of Purple Guy, but I guess indirectly they have, because you can buy toys of Spring Bonnie, who is just the mangled corpse of the murderer in the suit, right?
Yes, there are many toys. This is why I was kind of hesitant to answer the question, because I'm like, we haven't gotten to Springtrap yet. There are many toys of Springtrap. Actually, my favorite toy ever. I will be right back. I have a lot of like nerdy stuff, but for me, I'm really more into like Star Wars and Harry Potter and stuff like that. So I try not to get too much FNAF merch because people will just give it to me for Christmas anyway, and I don't want my entire house to be Five Nights at Freddy's. But I had to buy this. So this is Springtrap. So we can see his little, his heart and his lungs sticking through. And
Yes.
he's missing an ear, and he's got his little human teeth. And so it's like, oh, it's a little Springtrap plush. So he has a zipper here. And so the idea is that you can unzip him and you can see the body inside. And I had to buy this because I don't really feel like it went through a lot of testing.
Yeah.
To maybe see the design that we're looking at here may not be what they're intending to depict. So I had to buy this because I think it's a very funny piece of merch.
It is very funny. It's pretty horrifying, pretty grotesque. Did we ever see the corpse head in the game?
No. So we've been able to there's some like loading screens that are like glitches where you can kind of see like through his open mouths until you can see that there is a skull in there.
Okay.
But we never see anything as overt as like he takes his head out of the suit.
Yeah. Yeah. So this toy gives us the clearest glimpse.
The real lore
of what Purple Guy looks like in his real world form.
His real world. Yeah, very, very phallic. So yeah, that's the lore of Springtrap. And now, after 3 games, we're finding out what Golden Freddy is. He's an older suit. He's a Springlock suit. Who these were discontinued at some point because people got hurt in them. So the reason we then get the brown Freddy and the blue Bonnie is because they locked these suits away and you weren't supposed to use them anymore until someone used them to murder a bunch of kids. So we're now at the end of FNAF 3. This game had a lot more going on in the setup and the little mini games that you can play, but a lot less going on with the actual story of the events of the game. So like the phone guy conversations are a little less clear. So the game takes place decades after the first 2. We are in a horror attraction based on the myths and legends of Freddy's, that old restaurant that closed down because a bunch of kids died. Some people think the game takes place in 2015. Some people think it's 2023. Very esoteric reasons for picking one or the other. But the game was released in 2015. And so I personally think that it's sort of Scott's commentary on the popularity of Five Nights at Freddy's, where now in current present year 2015, people are nostalgic for Chuck E. Cheese or nostalgic for Freddy Fazbear's. And so it's the exact kind of thing someone would make a horror attraction on, the way that it's the kind of thing that Scott Cawthon would make a horror game about.
But is the idea that in this universe they're aware that Freddy's Fazbear was this terrible place where children died, and so now they're making an attraction that like leans into that. Like it's kind of a distasteful idea, I suppose. Like the idea you're making an attraction based on a horrible tragedy.
Yes,
right?
It's this is also, we get him a lot more now, but it's the era where like there'd be fictional movies or like Netflix documentaries about horrible serial killers that people watch like entertainment. True crime in 2015 was still like a weird thing, whereas now it's a lot more accepted.
This is like the idea of like making a themed restaurant based on like the Manson family murders or something, right? Like it's okay. Is that portrayed at all as being like something kind of grotesque and distasteful in the universe? Like
in the universe, everything is dark. It is a dark comedy satire. So the idea that someone would be like, yo, let's make a haunted house based on these real kids that died. We as the player are supposed to be like, that might be distasteful, but in universe, no one questions it because it's a satirical world. So what they do is they go to these old locations and they find bits and pieces of the old animatronics. And so they kind of put them up in the restaurant. And they find that the murderer, the purple guy, was, crushed by the suit. And so he couldn't move. And so he's been sitting there in the suit, haunting it for decades. So they're like, oh my God, we found a real Freddy's animatronic. We're going to put it in our horror attraction. And so the gameplay is you're the guard at the horror attraction, and the Springlock suit starts walking around, and if it gets to you, it kills you. But the game only has one enemy. It's like a boss fight. The only enemy is Springtrap. And so as you're fighting him off night to night, instead of a phone call from Phone Guy, the story is that they found a bunch of old tapes that Phone Guy recorded before he died that are telling you the history of the Springlock suits. And like, oh, if you get in a Springlock suit, be careful because it might crush you. oh, hey, someone moved an old Springlock suit in the back. Oh, hey, a bunch of kids just died. We're gonna like cover this up from the press. So you're sort of piecing together the story that someone killed the kids in the Springlock suits. And you're also getting these 8-bit minigames, which now, instead of coming on your death, just happen after you beat each night. And in each minigame, the purple guy tears apart a different one of the animatronics until the 5th night, when the 5th ghost chases him into the suit, and then he gets crushed. And so you're supposed to understand that those minigames are happening decades ago, and that at the end, you're like, oh, wait, this spring trap guy who's been my opponent in the nighttime night guard section of the game has been purple guy the whole time. Oh my god, that recontextualizes the entire game I just played. Kind of like how the second one recontextualizes you as the Bite of 87, victim.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm following along here. So is the game itself different since there's only Spring Bonnie as the villain?
The gameplay it's going to be a little difficult to like explain, but there's cameras still all over the building. And the in-universe lore is that when the suits are in animatronic mode, they're supposed to follow wherever they hear child voices, so that they are always where the party is. So they don't just wander into broom closets, they're always supposed to find their way back to a party. So you have these audio cues that you can play in different rooms. And so the idea is that as he gets closer to your office, you're supposed to use the audio cues to lure him back further. But you only have a certain number of cues until you have to reboot them, which takes time. And your camera will glitch out, which you then have to reboot, which takes time. And so you're supposed to juggle how much time left do I have until I have to reboot my camera, how many lures do I have left until I have to reboot that, what room is he in? There's branching paths, so you can't just say go to the room behind you. You have to sort of loop him around like a big maze. It's the most simple and boring to play. That is the community consensus on the quality of the gameplay itself.
Is that so? And so did the other animatronics, like, how do they appear? Like, they must make some sort of cameo, sort of presence.
There's literally a cardboard box in the corner of the room that has the toy animatronics, like pieces in it, like Balloon Boy's head is sitting in a box. And then kind of Chica's head is like on a wall, almost like a deer. There's like a scarecrow of Freddy like in one area. And the implication is that these are the actual animatronics. So at the end of FNAF 3, what happens is the horror attraction burned down. So you get to the end of night 6, and a newspaper appears on screen, and it says, a new local attraction based on the ancient pizzeria burned down overnight. And so the idea is that all of the haunted endoskeletons and casings and all the stuff from the previous games has now been burned, and so the curse is over. The animatronics have been finally destroyed for real.
Okay, so this kind of makes it seem like there can't be any more sequels. Was that sort of like the thing, like that Scott is sort of putting a bow on this and moving on?
So yes, especially if you go back and watch old Matpat videos, it's like the trilogy is over, this is the end. But this newspaper right here, if you brighten it, you can see Springtrap in the photo. He has survived the fire. This is his eyeball, and he's kind of looking sideways, and this is his smile. So, just like every Jason Voorhees movie, the killer has somehow survived the way that we thought we took him out, and he'll be back in the next one. So it's shown / implied that after the kids put him in the suit, that the kids are set free. There's this scene that we see, again, depicted like an arcade game, where there are 5 children, each wearing the masks of the different Freddy's characters. So Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And then a kid wearing a mask of the puppet walks over and gives them cake. And then a little happy jingle plays. And they all float up to heaven. Their spirits float up to heaven, and the masks fall to the ground. And so the kids are free now. And then the suits burn. And so it's all gone. The history is all, we've solved the problem.
Yes. Done and done.
It's all done. The story is over. Pay no attention to how much longer.
Can go on to other things.
For how much longer the games go on. As you're playing, you can hallucinate other characters. So this is where most of the jump scares in the game come from. Where when you're flipping through cameras to try to find Springtrap, sometimes you'll see like Balloon Boy on screen, and if you don't click away fast enough, then they're called phantoms. So the phantom animatronic will jump out at you, the player, and this causes you to have to immediately reboot your cameras and your audio cues. So you know, for gameplay purposes, you don't want to get caught by the phantoms. You don't lose, but it makes it harder to keep playing.
Okay.
So this is where the Mike is Fritz thing comes from. So whoever we're playing as in FNAF 3, which is, again, decades after the other games, hallucinates the FNAF 2 and the FNAF 1 animatronics. And so the idea is that whoever we're playing as had to see those characters in person in order to hallucinate them. So therefore, whoever we're playing as had to be in the FNAF 1 location, and also had to be in the FNAF 2 location. And we're not playing as the murderer, and we're not playing as Jeremy, who lost his frontal lobe. Therefore, we're playing as Fritz, and therefore we're playing as Mike, and therefore they're all the same person.
I don't quite follow that logic. Why couldn't they still be two different people? Like, couldn't you just be one or the other? Why do you have to be both simultaneously?
Because the only person who would have seen both sets of animatronics, to have seen both sets of animatronics, you would have to have been a night guard at both locations.
Unless he was just aware of them some other way. Like, you know, you can be aware of characters without having literally worked at the, you know, at the place, right?
I said that almost verbatim in my first ever FNAF video. I said, I have never been a night guard at Chuck E. Cheese, but I've still had nightmares about the bird girl from Chuck E. Cheese. This is sort of how people got to thinking that they might be the same. And again, it is still contentious. It's still something people don't necessarily agree with 100%. But there will be more evidence later that these characters are connected. But yes, I trust me, I used to think as you do.
Oh, well.
Wow. We'll see as we keep going. So yes, the children are freed, and the purple guy is springed, and it's now the 2010s or 2020s, and the place burned down, but he's still out there somewhere.
Yes.
So we're now moving on to FNAF 4. This is July of 2015, so another couple months later.
So even though FNAF 3 seemed like it could have been a moment to end the series, the fact that FNAF 4 came out so soon after suggested that wasn't, in fact, the intent. Maybe there was just a desire to just kind of reboot the series in a way. We'll see, I suppose.
Yes, the community had basically the exact same idea, where we're like, where could the story really go from here? And this is where Scott Cawthan really sat down and decided what the story was actually about, because the game we're about to see seems so completely unrelated to everything we've seen so far that nobody understood what was happening. It was originally marketed as FNAF 4 The Final Chapter. So we're like, okay, this is the finale. It's not. But it is very confusing booting it up for the first time, as you might get from this question.
Okay.
So this might be where you've heard certain things before, but what is Markiplier reacting to in this famous meme?
On 3, 1, 2.
So do you know what Markiplier says next? Do you know what this is?
No. Is this the bite? No, this can't be the bite of 87 because we've already established what that was. That was the bite of Jeremy. So who? Dave? I'm looking at my notes here. I don't remember who Dave is.
Dave is just a name we've mentioned. I haven't really told you who he is yet.
Okay. Maybe this is Dave's death? Because I don't know what the bite of 83 or big bite is.
So you would be correct. So what Markiplier does say here is...
Was that the bite of 87?
It's very possible you've heard that audio before. But this is probably the most famous FNAF meme. Like, even if you don't know anything about FNAF, you've probably, people have heard the Markiplier clip saying that.
Yeah. But I mean, like, that's self-evidently wrong, isn't it?
Yes.
Because, like, a kid is being bit, and yet we know from FNAF 2 that Jeremy, the employee, was the victim of the bite of 87. So surely no self-respecting FNAF fan would make such an amateurish mistake, right?
Correct.
And that's why this is a meme?
It's a meme because of his funny reaction. But at the time, it was very apparent that, no, this can't be the bite of 87, because it's not someone losing their frontal lobe, it's not an employee, it's not a this or that. Jeremy was the bite. So this is the Bite of 83, which they explain in canon that the way that we called World War One, the Great War before there was a World War II, they called the Bite of 83 the Big Bite before there was a Bite of 87.
Okay.
And that character's name is Dave, and this killed him.
Okay.
And Markiplier's wrong. So I've given this exact question to the other people I've given a similar quiz to, and none of them ever bring up, and this is kind of part of me tricking people, is that you can just very obviously see the name of the video. It just says Markiplier was at the Bite of 87.
Oh.
So I'm trying to trick people into choosing 87, but no, that's the only wrong answer.
But I've been following along, so I know
Yes.
it couldn't possibly be. Yeah.
Yes, you're acing your quiz. I don't play this again. No, come on. There we go. Okay, so FNAF ends with the death of the crying child. This is another character who we didn't have a name for literally a decade. So crying child and Dave will be used interchangeably. There's the Bite of 83, which we'd previously never heard of before. So Markiplier, not understanding this, asked if this was the Bite of 87 and spawned this enormous meme that is technically incorrect. If I'm telling you this game takes place in 1983, then what should that tell you based on the other things we've talked about?
So it takes place before FNAF 2, right?
Correct. If that was 87.
Because FNAF 2 was the prequel. So this is then a prequel to the prequel.
Yes.
So it's going back even further. Okay. So prequel to FNAF 2. I'm writing this down in my little book.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So we're doing an even deeper dive into the
Yep.
background.
Yep.
All right.
So who is this a plushie of? Who's this little guy?
That looks like Golden Freddy to me, unless this is yet another new character.
Golden Freddy, Fredbear, Yellow Bear, or Rick Fafaska. You're going to lock in Golden Freddy?
Golden Freddy, although it's in the video game, and since I know that we can't take it for granted that the cake bear is Freddy, I mean, I suppose it's possible that people just have another name for this, but I'll assume it's Golden Freddy.
Yes, that's the trick. So this is Fredbear. So first of all, his hat, completely different color. Golden Freddy's hat is black.
Oh.
I can't believe you didn't notice this because his hat's purple. Come on, JJ.
Well,
So Golden Freddy is only a name of the character out of universe. So because he's a yellow colored Freddy. In universe, they would call him Fredbear. He was the original animatronic. It was Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. These were yellow Springlock suits from the 80s that were retired after the Bite of 83. So Fredbear kills a child in front of a bunch of people, and the restaurant goes, "We're gonna retire that character, and now no more Fredbear. Now we have Freddy, and he's brown. So totally different character, never killed a child."
and that was enough to the public was fine with that. They were like, okay, we're
Yeah, well, it's a different color now. It's all good. You know, like if
Freddy.
if Mickey Mouse killed someone, then Disney might be like, okay, Oswald it is. He's our new mascot.
Yeah, and then they reopen the place, and it's like, now with fewer child murders, we've got this problem under control.
Little do they know, 2 years later, there will be many child murders.
Yeah.
The crying child, or Dave, the kid who dies, his favorite toy plush is the Fredbear plush, which makes it ironic that Fredbear is the one who kills him.
Okay.
So these little mini games you play between each night. So you do the nighttime gameplay, you unlock a mini game, you play it, you walk around as this little boy, and as we walk through his house, and then eventually we walk outside, we can go through his neighborhood, we can go to Fredbear's. He keeps getting bullied by his older brother. That is this boy who put him into Fredbear's mouth. He has a mask of Foxy. This is the crying child's older brother, and he bullies him and gets him killed by accident after beating the game.
Okay.
Just died.
But there is presumably somebody in the Fredbear, right? Because at this time, all of the animatronics are like suits. They're the spring suits, right?
So this is a Springlock suit, so it's in animatronic mode. Yeah. You can kind of see in his mouth that right now it's just an animatronic.
Okay, so this is complicated. Okay, so it was in animatronic mode.
Animatronic mode.
Unlike Spring Bonnie, which has a guy in it.
So it would be you go to the animatronic, you twist the spring lock so that then you can crawl inside and walk around.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
And
which is
probably
what the
get crushed.
purple guy did to murder the kids, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But Fredbear, there is no human responsible. It was just a machine
Correct.
misbehaving. Yeah.
Well, the older brother who shoved his brother's head in the mouth of a moving animatronic, and then the hydraulics killed him, maybe he's at fault.
I see.
Where does FNAF 4, and I'm talking about the nighttime gameplay where you're trying to avoid the animatronics from getting you, where does it take place? Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a haunted house, the Mega Pizzaplex, or a child's bedroom?
I really don't know this. I'm kind of like, I have a vague sense that some of the games start taking place in different locations than just the standard Freddy Fazbear location.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it takes place in a child's bedroom. I don't think so. Mega Pizzaplex, maybe? I'll say that.
Mega Pizzaplex?
Yeah.
Alright, so the answer is a child's bedroom.
It was a child's bedroom after all.
Yes, when the game came out, and it's like, okay, you're a child in a room with, like, stars on the wall and a baseball cap and an unclosed drawer. It was just very odd. This is a very weird location to be. So the gameplay is that Bonnie comes... I'm going to go to the next screen. The location is that Bonnie comes from the left door, and Chica comes from the right door. And you have to close the closet, otherwise Foxy will get you, but then he'll slowly open it from the inside till you have to close it again. And this mirrors the way that you play FNAF 1, which is that Bonnie will come from the left door and Chica from the right, and Foxy from behind a curtain. So you're sort of playing FNAF 1 again, but with no cameras, and you're in a child's bedroom. And so it's very, very weird. And when you complete the night, you then go into the mini game, where now you're playing as the child, Dave, going about his day, and his brother's scaring him, and he has his little favorite Fredbear plush. And at the end of the game, Dave gets his head crushed by the animatronic, and the next time that you're in the child's bedroom during the nighttime gameplay, it's very strongly implied that you're actually playing as the older brother, the one wearing the Foxy mask, because you start getting these hallucinations of an IV drip, or flowers that would be on a table next to a hospital bed. And so the idea is that you're being haunted by the guilt you feel for what you did to your brother. So monsters are coming, the way that you and your friends wore masks of the animatronics. Monsters are coming that look like the Freddy's animatronics to get you and eat you, the way that you and your friends wearing the masks of those characters killed your little brother.
So when does this switch take place? When does it go from being the Dave's point of view to the brother's point of view?
Every game tries to get you to believe something, and then once you beat the final night, it recontextualizes it. So in FNAF 2, you think that this is a sequel to the first one because the animatronics are more advanced, until the end when you see the paycheck and it says 87 and you realize that you've been playing as the victim. The third game, you're just fighting against Springtrap, you don't know what it is, until the final minigame and you realize that Springtrap's been the purple guy all along. This game, you believe that you're playing just as the crying child until the crying child dies, and so you realize you've actually been playing as the older brother who's guilt-ridden about the fact that he killed his brother. Which is another layer of obfuscation about the lore, because there's sort of two stories going on. There's a twist, right? So it recontextualizes everything. And so not everything is as it seems on the surface.
How do these things manifest? You said like there's flowers and all that. How does that actually show up in the game?
The view that we have right now of the bedroom is the main thing you'll see when you're playing. But you can also turn 180 degrees around to stare at your bed. In FNAF 1, Freddy sneaks up behind you, and that's how he kills you. So in this, Freddy can be on top of your bed, and you have to look at him to make him go away. And if you don't look at him for long enough, then he'll get you. And in the frames when you're sort of turning around, you turn past a nightstand, and there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that there might be an IV drip there, or a bottle of pills, or flowers and a condolence card. And so the idea is that you're sort of hallucinating the things that you would have seen in the hospital when your brother was dying.
This is getting very very dark for a
Yes.
children's game.
Yes.
You know, literally, like the death of children is now becoming like very explicit and very foregrounded, as opposed to merely sort of implied or alluded to.
Yep. I was gonna say, I always say that like FNAF 1 is kind of like the rumors you might hear on a playground where a kid goes,
Yes.
"Did you know that a kid died at Chuck E. Cheese once?"
Yes, yes.
Whereas now you're playing as a teenager who accidentally bullies their brother to death, and we see it happen on screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have any sort of sense that like this made the series more controversial with like parents or anything? No.
No.
I mean, this is a lot of lore for a parent to kind of be
Yes.
aware of.
It's so subtextual that I don't know how many people who aren't themselves keeping up with the story would follow it. I don't know what it is. When I was growing up, Pokemon and Harry Potter were demonic, and my dad didn't let me watch The Simpsons. Like, parents were very against kids media that was anything besides like Teletubbies. You know, Power Rangers was
Yes.
considered controversial because they're solving the problems
Yes,
with
yes.
violence. But I know a lot of people who grew up with Five Nights at Freddy's. They started watching when they were 6 years old. I worked at a movie theater when the first movie came out, and this father was walking by with like his son, like, you know, on his arms, on his shoulder, probably going to see like a Pixar movie. And the kid points over his dad's shoulder at the poster for the movie, and he goes, "Freddy." And I'm like, I don't, this is a PG-13 franchise about dead kids and scary monsters. I don't know why, you know, these parents sort of let their kids interact with it in the way that they definitely do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not say the series has never been hit with any sort of censorship concerned parents thing the way that in the 2000s and the 90s it seemed like every popular media did. There's been no moral outrage about Freddy's.
Is this kind of stuff like, is there any degree to which like it's sort of softened in some of the extended universe media? Like, you know, you made your big video about all the books and stuff,
Mhm.
right? And like those are books that you can imagine, you know, children are reading in school, or maybe parents are reading with their kids and stuff like that. And is there any degree that like the child killing aspects are kind of downplayed or softened?
The exact opposite.
Really?
I think that because if you were to film those books, they'd have to be rated R.
Really? They're that violent?
I think that because they're books and you're not seeing it, it's not the same.
Yeah.
There's one where a guy gets Foxy's hook in his eyeball, and it describes his eyeball popping, and the blood coming out. There are stories where a guy, for various reasons, most of these stories, I'm sure you're aware of Goosebumps.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's Goosebumps, it's the Twilight Zone, it's just these sort of individual novellas that are an anthology where we're just sort of seeing people's lives and then something scary happens. So one of them is he finds a Balloon Boy toy and it tells him to play the lottery, and he does, and he wins. And so then he starts relying on it to do everything, to make all of his decisions. He's like, should I break up with my girlfriend? And Balloon Boy says yes, so he does. And then at the end, he's like, I don't think I'm very attractive. I don't like my nose. What should I do? And Balloon Boy's like, cut off your nose. And he's like, okay, so he cuts off his nose. And he's like, I feel like I'm too short. And Balloon Boy's like, cut off your legs and put 2x4s in between your shins and your ankles so that you're taller. He's like, okay. And he's like, oh, like, I wish my eyes were bigger. And Balloon Boy's like, cut off your eyelids. So the story ends with this guy just absolutely mutilating himself. And then like he goes out on the town, and so it's supposed to be like, oh, the scary man's coming to get you. But there is blood, there is violence, there are children. One of them is a kid runs out in the road and he gets hit by a car and he dies. And so we cut to his younger brother's perspective as him and his father have to go to the scene and see the paramedics zipping the body bag over his brother's corpse after he just got smashed by a van. Like, these are definitely violent, gory books.
And yet they are sort of marketed to like preteens, right?
12-year-olds, yes. They are
12-year-olds,
explicitly
okay.
12-year-olds, yes.
Wow. I guess today's kids are hardier when
More
it
than
comes
I
to that
was.
sort of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, in my day, Goosebumps seemed pretty tame by this standard.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Even, I mean, I read Hunger Games when I was that age, and the violence was never glorified in that manner, you know?
Yeah.
No, I continually make comments about how I'm like, I don't know how kids are reading these, but yeah. Yeah, so FNAF 4, we see a child die, and we find out that we, the protagonist, are the ones who did it, and we're the Foxy Mask boy.
Hmm.
All right, backtracking. So when you're playing the actual game, Do you know
Yes.
how to tell where the animatronics are since there's no cameras? Do you have to listen to
Well,
their
I feel
breathing
like
at the door, or shine
your
their flashlight?
your image sort of spoils this. I feel like it looks like there's some sort of flashlight mechanic
Mm-hmm.
that you rather than look at the cameras, you just point your flashlight in a specific direction. I would assume that's the case. So
So the
Number
case is
2.
that the flashlight does nothing at all. Um, so you have to go to the door, and it is pitch black, and you're supposed to
Yeah.
listen for the animatronics breathing. And if they're breathing in your
that's
ear,
terrifying.
you have to close the door. And this, I cannot play this game. I'm partially deaf in my left ear, but also because to play the game optimally, you want to turn your volume all the way up, which means when you do get jump scared, it's the loudest noise you've ever heard in your entire life. So this is definitely considered the scariest game in the franchise.
That sounds pretty terrifying, but very clever. That's quite ingenious. If you're trying to like engineer a very terrifying experience, this is a good way to do it.
All right, here's maybe if you can consult your notes, if you can piece together this puzzle. Who is the Foxy mask boy? Is he the purple guy as a teenager? Is he the purple guy's son? Is he the phone guy as a teenager, or is he the phone guy's son?
I feel like it would make most sense for him to be purple guy as a teenager. Although, yeah, I guess that would make sense. I was thinking that sort of contradicts the idea that purple guy was in some ways the involved in the founding of Freddy Fazbear, but I don't think you ever actually said that. Henry was the founder, who was someone else. So purple guy, I guess, could have just been, because purple guy did work at the place, but there's nothing to stop him from also having been, an attendee when he was younger. I guess it just depends how old purple guy is. I feel like that would make the most sense. That would make more sense than, because it's a prequel, right? So he was young in this game, and then he would be older at the time that the murders of the other children happen, which would be sometime between this one and FNAF 2, if I have this right.
Yes.
So,
The murders.
Yeah,
we believe the murders happened in 85. So Crying Child dies 83. The MCI Missing Children incident 85. Bite of 87.
Yeah. So yeah, it's sometime there. So that would be my guess. Yeah, it's purple guy.
So the purple guy, remember, was the Spring Bonnie actor character. So this is the purple guy's son killing the purple guy's other son. Perhaps his son, purple guy's son, being killed by the embodiment of Henry's mascot character might make him go a little crazy and maybe want to kill Henry's daughter in some sort of karmic sense of revenge, perhaps.
Hold on. So like this is the second murder.
This is the first.
No,
death.
This is the first murder. This is like the inciting murder. Hold on, I need to write this down better. So FNAF 4 is the very first, like chronologically is the very first, followed by FNAF 2. FNAF 2 is the Bite of 87 game. And then hold on, I need you to repeat again, like when the child murders happen.
So,
they happen between FNAF 4 and FNAF 2?
Yes, they are the still to this day unseen location where
the MCT,
the MCI,
Missing
Children's Incident, where
yes, that's right.
The purple guy kills the Henry's daughter outside the building, who becomes the puppet. And then we notice that he kills 5 kids and stuffs their bodies into suits, which causes the location to close, and then reopen as the Bite of 87 location, which closes because of the Bite of 87. So we can sort of assume that the death of his son is sort of the, as you said, inciting incident that then allows the rest of this to happen. It's also, we can assume that his son in some way is related to Golden Freddy because he is killed by Fredbear, but we also know that he killed 5 kids. And so there is an additional murder victim that was shoved in Golden Freddy. So it's possible that what makes Golden Freddy so special is that he sort of has 2 hauntings associated with him. He killed the crying child by accident, and then he also has this 5th kid shoved inside of him.
Was Purple Guy working at the place in FNAF 4?
We get one shot of him on the bottom left
Yeah.
here, at work, he is helping someone into a suit. So that's the purple
Oh,
guy
I
who's wearing
see.
a little manager badge.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And the reason that we go to Freddy's is because we're the sons of, one of the guys who works there.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm up to speed now.
Yes, as I keep saying, this is all surface level stuff. There's so much more. But
that's terrifying.
and I'm also, what am I doing? I'm telling you the story sort of in order as opposed to like guessing what these things might mean. This is as simple as I can make it. So FNAF 4 is a prequel, takes place in 83. We learn the origins of a lot of our main characters. Purple Guy is an employee at Freddy's. His oldest son kills his younger son. This sort of makes Golden Freddy an entity. Dave has that little plush of Fredbear that follows him around. When Dave dies, on the bottom right here, we see the scene where at the end of the scene, he sort of fades off into heaven and, he dies. But we see in this imagined mindscape of his death, the Fredbear plush saying, "I will put you back together." And so a lot of people think that this is the purple guy telling his son, "I will resurrect you. Like, I will fix you." And that might be why he became obsessed with the idea of putting souls into robots, because maybe he could use, he's experimenting on kids to learn how to do it to bring his son back to life.
I see.
So that's
okay. That's a pretty good explanation for his motives.
And it took 4 games to get there. It took over a year to sort of have these. Anything I keep saying this. It's like the theorizing for the first couple games was, what date does this take place, and what are objective facts about the things we're learning. Now we're getting into character motivations and backstories and things like that.
Okay.
When you beat all the challenge modes, we see this little box, and there's text on the box that says, "Perhaps some things are best left forgotten for now." And we cannot open the box. We're just staring at a locked box. And Scott has said that he intended to open the box after Matpat put out his video explaining what happened in the game, the way that he had done for the first 3. And Matpat's video was completely wrong.
Oh.
So Scott made a post that was basically like, "I thought people would solve the game. They didn't, and I think that's a little special. So I'm never going to open the box." And to this day, he has not opened the box, and we do not know what the box is. The main thing to know from this is sort of like, if you're talking to FNAF fans, they might bring up the box. The box is just something everyone knows, because it's sort of the biggest dangling mystery we have. What was the intended solution? Because to this day, we still don't really understand it.
So there's still never like you referred to the purple guy being the father of the 2 boys, but that's not ever been like explicitly sort of stated. Like, that's just a reasonable inference to make based on what we've been subjected to.
It is a possible inference to make from this game. The next one will make it very overt. Then it will tell us that the purple guy's the father.
The fact that the games don't take place in sequential order is something new to me. Like, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that there's all of this kind of like, oh, it's going back and forth and all of that kind of stuff. That is interesting.
They're also overtly tricking you. So, like I said, the second game, it's advertised as, this is the grand reopening with brand new animatronics.
Yes.
And that's because it's the brand new opening after the kids were all murdered, not after the first game. This one, in one of the mini games, you can walk up to a television and it'll play the introduction to a cartoon, like a theme song, and it says copyrighted 1983 on it. And so the only reason we know this game takes place in 1983 is because in one of the mini games, you can go into an optional room and click a TV, and then if you read it really closely, it says 83 on it. That's how all of these details are put together. You retweeted someone saying this once, where someone was talking about like this really in-depth breakdown of some video game or something, and the tweet was something to the effect of like, if it wasn't for video games, this person could have like cataloged every species of beetle that exists in the world and like done something correct with their life. But now we're just talking about nonsense. People have referred to like listening to my explanations as like a college course in this stuff, and it really is. But at the end of the day, it's a video game.
I can see why. Like it's compelling, right?
Yes.
Like I mean, it is fun to solve mysteries. I mean, that's I suppose something that's a little bit surprising as well is like the degree to which uh these games seem to be structured in a more sort of purposeful way than I think I initially anticipated. Like, sometimes it's easy, I think, for people like me on the outside who don't, just kind of consume. I don't consume a lot of this kind of media, a lot of game or fantasy kind of stuff in general. So it's very easy to assume that when something has an elaborate lore and a kind of an elaborate sort of community, that these people are kind of making something out of nothing, that it's all in their heads and, but it sounds like these games are deliberately sort of set up, at least maybe not the first one, but the subsequent great games are sort of set up in such a way as to lead the fans on, to kind of give them little breadcrumbs, so to speak, and to help sort of flesh out theories and sort of like the symbiotic relationship with Matpat, I think also kind of reveals that too, like that Scott sort of is doing things intentionally and is trying to see if people can figure out what he's trying to say and all of that. So that's kind of fun, and that makes it seem, some of this stuff seem a little bit less frivolous and more like, that they're consuming the media the way it was intended to be consumed.
Yeah, Scott has said that mostly based on Matt's theories in his videos, that when there's sort of a misunderstanding he sees in the community, he tries to clarify it with the next game that comes out. So there's definitely this back and forth with him using Matpat as like a stand-in for the success of the mystery that he's created. If we get it wrong, then maybe he blames himself for sort of being a bad writer. If we get things too easily, then he's like, oh, I'm going to make the next one even more complicated, which is, I think what happened with FNAF 4 is he made it a little too complicated. And so to this day, we don't fully understand, the talking Fredbear plush. It has little pinpricks of white glowing in its eyes, which in all the other games is a sign of possession.
Yeah.
So the question is like, if the crying child is the first death in the series, then is his doll looks possessed. It has, glowing eyes. If he's the first death, then who's possessing the doll? And so that makes people go, oh, maybe the girl who became the puppet died first. Maybe, the purple guy killed his business partner's child first. But then she becomes the puppet, so why would she be the doll? And then other people try to justify it and say things like, oh, well, the mini games that we're playing through are sort of such abstract representations. The way that I try to put it is it's kind of like a Christmas Carol, where like you have the Fredbear plush as like the ghost of, Christmas past, walking the crying child through his week after he's bitten, but before he dies. And so it's like, these are the things that have happened to you, and now you will go on to possess me in the real world. Which is not in the game. It answers all the questions, but there's almost no evidence for it, right? It's like begging the question. Yeah. It's like, if everything is an abstract video game with ghosts, then it answers everything, but I don't have the stepping stones to get there. It's like guess and check. And so to this day, there's many competing theories about FNAF 4, but they're all guess and check. Matpat's video, the one that Scott said was wrong, was he said that all the games are just a dream. He says that the crying child sees his little plushies, and he's scared of the animatronics because they killed him. And so the first 3 games didn't happen. They're all nightmares had by the crying child, which is just overtly wrong because, like we said, you can use the minimum wage of when the first game takes place to figure out when it's set. The idea that an 8-year-old child in 1983 would be able to dream the difference of a minimum wage increase between 1987 and 1992 is just like not possible. So Matpat got kind of clowned on for that. All right, so we're close to the end. We're definitely further in.
Okay.
We're going to take a little detour now that we're done with FNAF 4. We're going to talk about the books and FNAF World. So 2016, late 2015 and early 2016, we get the first expanded media. 2015 is also when Scott sold the film rights. So a FNAF movie was in development for about 10 years before the first one came out, because they just kept working and reworking the script. So question number 1 is, who is this?
I do not know, but I think this is from FNAF World, which I'm sort of dimly aware of, because FNAF World was like a radical kind of departure for the series, right? It was a kind of like RPG type of game in which the characters were kind of their cartoon versions, like they're kind of like in universe kind of fictitious versions of themselves. So like they weren't the animatronics, they weren't physical things that exist in our world. They were like the cartoon versions of the characters that exist in the kind of extended media universe of the FNAF sort of world.
That is completely correct.
Okay. And I know, I even know kind of more about this on a kind of meta level, because I know from watching the Solar Sands video on Scott Cawthan's sort of career, which I'm sure you've seen, that Scott had basically had this kind of like game engine that he'd used previously, and he seems to be very fond of a certain kind of RPG game. And so in the sense that he seems to have certain hang-ups of things that he's just very obsessed with, and one of them seems to be like he wants to make an RPG game of some sort, and it seemed like this was just an opportunity for him to kind of live out that dream with these characters. I don't know much more about it beyond that, except that, yeah, this style was the style that the game was done in, and so this is, I guess, some new character that was made up for FNAF World.
So it's so interesting to me that, like, because you saw that video, which we had, me and you talked about that in DMs, it's like, you know a lot about FNAF World, which I think to the general population is sort of the most obscure game, because it's an RPG, it doesn't play the same as the others. But then, like, you didn't know about Purple Guy. Like, that's so wild as an insider to talk to someone with that perspective. So I'll give you a hint. This is not from FNAF World, but the thing you were just talking about might help you out in thinking about who it might be.
Is this from one of Scott's previous games or franchises or something? Yeah.
Yes.
Is this the thing? Yeah, and this was from like a game that the FNAF World engine is based on?
So this guy's name is Chipper. So the game that Scott made right before Five Nights at Freddy's was called Chipper and Sons Lumber Co. And it had these little beaver guys. And the game was criticized because they said that the characters in the game looked like creepy animatronics. And Scott went, fine, I'll make a game about creepy animatronics if that's what you guys think my art style is, which he did. And that became FNAF, obviously. So after FNAF 4, Scott said that the story was so dark and sad that he had to take like a step back. And so he makes FNAF World, which the bottom left picture is like a good depiction of what it looks like in the overworld. Very like Final Fantasy. You're walking through an overworld and there's random encounters and monsters that jump out at you, and you play as Freddy and you have a party that you can grow the levels of, and there's the mage who heals you, and there's which is Chica, and then there's the really strong attacker, and that's like Freddy. In FNAF World, when you get to the final boss is Chipper from Chipper and Sons. And he says, it wasn't fair. It was supposed to be me. My franchise was supposed to be the one that was successful, not Five Nights at Freddy's. And so it's a very meta take on all of Scott's previous work. And when you defeat Chipper, you then fight Scott himself. You fight his like Steam avatar. It's this glowing blue cube. And then when you defeat him, he's like, this is what you guys get for criticizing all of my Five Nights at Freddy's game and just demanding more and more from me. So it's this incredible meta experience of playing this Final Fantasy Earthbound style game and then, fighting through all of Scott's previous characters to get to him. But beyond that, it's also canon.
Okay.
So the main quest is the Freddy. His name is Adventure Freddy, adjective Freddy. So Adventure Freddy is going on a quest through Animatronica, which is a world that exists on the flip side from reality. And his quest is to put somebody back together. You're finding things to put someone back together. The phrase, put you back together, is what the bear said to the crying child as he was dying in FNAF 4.
Oh, yeah.
So in this game, we're a Freddy character going around and picking up things to put someone back together. So whatever we're doing in this game is affecting the real world in a manner that allows the crying child to possess Golden Freddy or something similar. So while it's a meta game about Chipper and Scott, it's also literally happening, whether or not it's heaven or it's a haunted video game or something just more abstract than that. It is canon.
Okay. But yeah, it's in some sort of alternate dimension.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They say everything that happens out there in the real world has an effect in here on the flip side.
Okay. Yeah, this is a bit much, but
each game is just like seeing your face get a little more like oh my god, this is so much more complicated than I previously thought. It's been quite funny.
What is Chipper? Is Chipper a machine when you fight him? He looks like
he's
a robot. Yeah,
he's like Metal Mario. He's like metal Chipper.
Metal Chipper.
Yeah, there's also like classic video game stuff. Scott is I think he's early 50s, maybe mid 50s. So he's also in love with classic video games and film and stuff like that. So he has a lot of reference to them. There's a mini game that is literally just Star Fox 64, but it's Star Foxy.
Oh yeah.
So like there's a character who's like Slippy who says really annoying things, and you're flying through on your plane. So FNAF World, that's kind of weird. The first book was also published around this time. It's called The Silver Eyes. So my question for you is, are the books canon? Yes, no, or we don't know?
I feel like we don't know might be the answer, just because you've kind of made it seem like the series has a certain degree of kind of calculated ambiguity to it. So this would make sense as being one more way that might manifest.
So as I just said, the first book was 2015, and it's currently 2025, so it's been 10 years. We didn't know if the books were canon for 10 years. And a lot of people complained and basically told Scott, like, you're asking us to find a needle in a haystack, but with the books being canon or not, you're asking us to find a needle in a stack of something and we don't even know whether it's hay or something else. Like, it's so complicated to read a book that tells us something and not know if it applies to the game or not.
Yeah.
About 4 months ago, so the answer is no, they're not.
Okay.
About 4 months ago, the most recent game came out, and we can now say that definitively the books are not canon, but that took 10 years for us to find out. So when I started my project reading all the books, we didn't know, and by the time I finished it, we now know that they don't count. And I always thought...
What are they instead?
They are just sort of alternate universe stories, like just like different continuities. So in the Silver Eyes, which was the first book that was published, the main character is Charlie, who is the daughter of Henry, who was the one Purple Guy's first murder victim. But in this, she's a teenager. She was not murdered, but her friend Mike, who remembers the name of the first guard from the first game, her friend Mike was murdered, and her friend Mike is Golden Freddy, and she has to solve this mystery like Scooby-Doo with all of her friends. And so not knowing what we can take from the book and what we can't was very confusing. The book gave us the name William Afton for the murderer, and it gave us the name Henry for the founder of the company. So up until this book, it was Purple Guy and the founder. Now it's William and Henry.
Okay. But even though this is not canon, the name William and Henry have still been embraced as the correct terms in the community.
Yes. So the names have been embraced. They were later confirmed in the games. Okay. The problem with that is that there are things in the books that haven't been confirmed or contradicted in the games. And so the community will fight over, can we take something from the books and put it in the games? And some people will say no, because this was contradicted. And some people will say yes, because William was later confirmed. So every layer of complexity I've so far described, with the games tricking you to have a big plot twist and telling you lore in minigames, and then whatever FNAF World is, the existence of non-canon books that might be feeding you misinformation makes that 100 times more complicated than what you were imagining 5 minutes ago.
So it's ambiguous. Maybe this will be confirmed, maybe not. It's a good start, maybe. Like, it's worth, maybe if you're so desperate for closure or whatever, it's like the books maybe can tide you over, and maybe you'll find if it was worthwhile or not in the long term when you're trying to solve these mysteries. But you've read all of these books.
So the Silver Eyes, that's a trilogy of 3 books that are in a
Yes.
continuity. They then started a 12-book-long series called Fazbear Frights, literally just goosebump books. Those 12 books are what my 36-hour video is. So it's
Okay.
not the first 3 books. When Fazbear Fright ended, they started a new series called Tales from the Pizzaplex, which is 8 more goosebump
Okay.
books. Those are also not in my
Yeah.
video. So my 36-hour-long video is only 12 of the 23 books that exist.
Okay. It's 3 books, and then the Pizzaplex books, and then what did you say they were called?
Fazbear Frights.
Fazbear Frights. And there were how many?
There are 12 Fazbear Frights, 8 Tales from the Pizzaplex, and then a trilogy of the Silver Eyes.
Have you read them all though?
No. So I did all the Frights, made my 36-hour video,
Yeah.
and now I'm going to do all the Tales and make my, I don't know, 28-hour video, whatever that's going to come out to a year from now.
Are they good books?
Okay. No. There are maybe... So the books are... Do I have any? I don't know if I have any in this room. The books are each split into 3 stories. So it's like an 80-page story, and you staple 3 of those together into one physical book.
Okay.
So with 12 books, 3 stories per book, I'm bad at math. I think that's 36. Of the 36 stories, I'd say 4 of them are good.
Yikes.
Yikes.
But you're such a fan of this. You're such a fan of this franchise.
Yes, of course.
Is that not enough to carry you through it?
I'm a 30-year-old with a degree in English literature and philosophy, and I'm reading these books for children. The fact that I enjoyed 4 of them, I think, is a thumbs up on the franchise as a whole.
Well, I suppose so. But I would think that you would, at the very least, enjoy spending time in these fictitious worlds. But are the books so bad that they actively detract from your ability to enjoy?
Some of the books are really, really bad. Like just the dumbest thing you can possibly think of. I think the reason a lot of fans of the series don't really like the books is because they don't all deal with characters and things from the games. So if you look at, I don't know if you can see my mouse, you can.
Yeah.
So this little dog character is not in the games. His name is Fetch. He's an animatronic dog. He's not in the games. This is a haunted alarm clock. This is a bunny. It shows symbols in the picture, like you clang them together. He's supposed to wake you up. This is a giant blackbird. This is a girl who's turning into gelatin and has candy all over her face. These things aren't from the games.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I want to read about Freddy Fazbear haunted alarm clock story. Giant blackbird story. Like, the concepts have nothing to do with the games. So a lot of people who love the games find no value in the books whatsoever.
Who is writing these books?
So Scott Cawthon is the credited author on all of them, but he's given interviews where he sort of explains his method. So he comes up with all the concepts. So again, they're kind of like Goosebumps or Twilight Zone episodes. Comes up with the concepts, writes a 10-page outline, and then gives it to one of his writers. So he has this revolving cast of writers who, they are credited on the books. So there's Ellie Cooper, Andrea Wagner, Carly Ann West, Kelly Parra. These are people who go in and turn his 10-page outline into an 80-page story. And sometimes his concept is really stupid, and so they try their best.
Yes.
And sometimes his concept is like fine, but when you stretch it out from 10 pages and a twist reveal at the end to an 80-page novel, it's just like, I didn't enjoy reading this because it was too long and so much stuff happened that didn't matter.
Yeah.
He did an interview where he said his least favorite story was one where there's a video game developer who is in the book working on a Five Nights at Freddy's video game, and he's like making FNAF 3, so he's making Springtrap in the game, and the character is a jerk. No one likes him. He got married and then got divorced because he couldn't stop looking at his secretary, and he's a misogynist, and his roommate gets a girlfriend and he tries to steal her away from the roommate. And he's really bad at his job, and he can't program the AI for Springtrap correctly. And then he he wakes up one morning and he has some very strange pains throughout his body and he doesn't know what's going on. And then we continue to see a couple episodes of like, he goes on like a Tinder date with a girl who's like fatter than she is in her profile picture. And so he makes fun of her for this and she calls him a jerk and walks away. Anyway, he ends up that he is pregnant with Springtrap. And so the story ends with he has to cut his stomach open to relieve the pain, and a little baby Springtrap hops out of his stomach like an alien chest burster, and then he dies bleeding to death. And it's a metaphor because he's a misogynist, and so pregnancy, something like there's something there. there's something there. But yeah, it's the story where a man gets pregnant with Springtrap. That was Scott's concept, and it became a book. So like that's what you're in for when you open these.
So hard-hitting social commentary from the FNAF children's lips.
Yeah.
So that's quite something. Did these books sell well?
Yes. New York Times best-selling, all of them, millions and millions of copies. Oh yes.
My. I'm sure that they must be filling up all of the like elementary school libraries across the land. Yeah.
Scholastic
book
fairs.
Yeah, I was gonna say these have like Scholastic Book Club written all over them.
Mm-hmm. Walmart has a Five Nights at Freddy's section in the book section. There's always just a continually rotating section of these books. They also made graphic novels out of these books. So there's the books, there's the graphic novels, there's like little puzzle books and stuff. Very popular. So kids grew up on these.
And they come out. I would assume they're making new ones every year.
They were doing a book every couple of months. But the Pizzaplex books ended about a year ago, and we haven't gotten any sort of... There were some choose-your-own-adventure novels that came out that were actually pretty good. But we're now in like the longest stretch of time we've ever gone without having new books. And I think it's just because Scott's been so busy with the movie. Because he's the sole credited screenwriter on the second movie. He wrote the second movie. Yeah.
Is there a movie novelization?
There's a novelization for the first movie, but not the second one so far. Okay. So yes, the amount of reading material that is literally just not canon and doesn't count, but we didn't know that for 10 years for this, funny Scare Bear game is a lot. Yeah. 36 hours worth. Okay, so FNAF 5 is called Sister Location. It's not technically called FNAF 5, but we can interchangeably call it FNAF 5 and Sister Location. Well, the idea, FNAF 4 was the final chapter, so now this is going to be a spin-off. Maybe it's still about animatronics, maybe it's still set in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, but this is something else over there, is what we thought in October of 2016. This has now been the longest gap since a game came out, and we're entering into this new era. So we see brand new animatronics. Do you know what they're called? Are they the sister animatronics, the funtime animatronics, the party on animatronics, or the celebration animatronics?
I feel like I should know this because I have seen lots of toys of them. Mm-hmm. And are they called Party On? Or are they... I don't know. I'm not confident. I know that they're called something, but I'm not sure. I've seen
one
them,
of those
I've
four,
seen them
in
for
fact.
Sale. Yeah, no, I've seen them for sale, and I feel like... I thought it's something like... Yeah, I don't know. Is it Party On?
The correct answer is actually Funtime.
Funtime. Oh.
They are pink and purple and white, and there's this the one on the bottom right that's Baby. She's a clown girl, and they're fun and they're not scary, right? Fun and not scary animatronics.
Yes. Well, in a manner of speaking, yeah.
Yeah, not scary on the surface, maybe. So we have Circus Baby, she's a clown. We have Ballora, the ballerina, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy.
Okay.
The game opens with us hearing William Afton, Purple Guy's voice for the first time. Scott has now hired voice actors to come in, so it's not just him as Phone Guy anymore. And he's a man who has a deep British accent. The actor said that he modeled William's voice off of Hannibal Lecter. So it's William going, "I have designed new animatronics, and they're beautiful." So we can take this moment, and we know he designed these guys before he then murdered the kids, and all the stuff happened because he was still working for the company and making these robots. They were created for a spin-off restaurant called Circus Baby's Pizza World. But Circus Baby's Pizza World closed after only 1 day of operation.
Why?
Why? Is it because Baby ate William's daughter? Funtime Freddy reminded Foxy Bro of the bite of 83, and so he was traumatized. Ballora spun too fast and killed William's wife. Or Funtime Foxy was torn apart by excited kids.
Maybe it's she spun too fast and killed the wife, which would explain why the wife isn't present in any of the subsequent games.
We're gonna lock in his wife being
I'll
killed
try
by
it.
Ballora?
I'll try that guess.
All right, no. So the answer is that Baby ate his daughter.
Oh, dang. He's lost a lot of kids to these machines.
So you see this little GIF on the bottom right. Baby has dispensed ice cream, and his daughter walks up, and then her stomach opens up, and a giant claw reaches out and eats his daughter. So William, this is after the son is killed by Fredbear. He designs these animatronics in order to snatch children. So the idea is that Baby the Clown lures kids in and then puts them in her stomach hatch so that he can then use them to experiment on to then try to learn how to bring his son back. And he tells his daughter, don't go anywhere near them. And then she goes near them. And so his machinations to bring the son back has now killed his daughter. So this is probably after 83, and then his daughter dying is probably what makes him go, you know what, I'll do it myself. I will lure the kids to the back room and stuff them in the suit. So this is probably after 83, before 85.
Okay. Why would that be controversial? That seems obvious.
Some people think that the daughter dying, that the daughter is the one who possesses the Fredbear plush, because there's always the question of why does the Fredbear plush have glowing eyes? So maybe she died before the brother. But if she died first, then what is William's motivation to snatch and kill children? Because it seems like he's doing it to bring his son back. If he's not doing it to bring his son back, why is he doing it? Those are kind of the arguments. And this is actually still something that probably FNAF fans would be split almost 50-50 on.
Really? Well, I feel like I accept the premise that this happens after FNAF 4. Because I think that just makes a more sensible sort of sequence of events, the way that you described it, right? Like the son is killed, and then he makes this machine in an effort to capture children to begin his experiments, which then, define his motivations for the subsequent murders. So then there's a more kind of like natural acceleration of his villainy.
Yep. Accident leads to, the result of his own actions leads to his own spring locking eventually. Whereas if this happens first, then it goes from he is the reason his daughter died to then the next thing is his son dying in a freak accident that's really no one's fault. Like like you said, it's sort of this way it ramps up, and that's a lot more compelling.
Yeah.
All right, so after his daughter dies and they close down the restaurant, he then still has these robots that he wants to do something with. So he converts it to a rental service. So the animatronics stay in the old closed down pizzeria, but you can rent them out for birthday parties. So that was the daughter dying. That was sort of the backstory that we're learning about. In the modern day that we're actually playing the game as a night guard who goes into the building, this is not 1984 or whenever the daughter died. This is some time in the future, the way that all the games sort of have the mini games as the history flashback and then the office gameplay as the present. So in the present, we're now going down there and we're asked to help with maintenance. So what are some of our tasks in this game? Do we have to shock the animatronics to calm them down? Do we need to sing with the animatronics to help them stay in time with the music? Do we need to remove their endoskeleton so that the engineers can fix them? Or do we need to clean out the animatronics so that they don't get like gum and stuff on their insides?
Jeez Louise, I have no clue at all. I have not seen any sort of... I have not absorbed anything through cultural osmosis as far as this kind of stuff goes. I don't know. Maybe shocking. That sounds like the most violent thing. So maybe maybe it could be with the vibe of the thing.
Guess. That's a good guess because that is correct. Oh my gosh. So, unlike the first 4 games where you're just sitting there and the animatronics are coming to you and you have to survive, Sister Location is just a collection of mini games. Like, you go in and they're like, you need to click these things really carefully. Or there's one segment where you have to crawl through a dark room and listen for music cues to stop crawling, because that's when ballora is going to come and get you. So each of the 5 nights are progressively harder little point-and-click minigames. So it's very different gameplay-wise than the first 4.
And it all takes place in the rental.
All takes place in the
facility.
rental facility.
Yeah.
One of the things that happens is Funtime Foxy attacks you, and Baby rescues you. And because the animatronics want to kill you because you're a human, she puts you into a spring lock suit. So you need to wind the spring locks so that you don't get crushed to death, like all night until the morning, and then the other employees can come in and save you. So the story that's going on is you're here to just do your normal night shift and just, get paid. And then the animatronics are hostile, except for Baby. She keeps saving you. While we're in the spring lock suit, because we're in the animatronics only area, we see this giant claw thing on the bottom left. And the function of this giant claw is to smash apart the exterior plastic casings of the animatronics to get to their endoskeletons. So then the endoskeletons can be fixed by the engineers. So while we're in the spring lock suit, we see this happening. So it's sort of setting up what will happen later, and we see that this scoop is breaking them apart.
So violent.
Very
not
violent.
Not the best way to have designed these machines, I think.
So on the 5th night, Baby tells us that the engineers are going to kill her. We need to save her. And so to do this, she tells us to enter into a secret door. What happens inside that secret door? Is it that we find out that Baby killed William's daughter, Elizabeth? Is it that we find blueprints for the animatronics and realize that William, our boss, is killing kids? Is it that we get scooped by the scooper, and then Baby's endoskeleton crawls inside of us and wears us like a skin suit so that she can look like a human on the outside and escape to the real world? Or is it that she made ice cream and pizza for us?
This is quite a range of options here. Geez, I have no clue. Maybe the second one, that they find the blueprints, and I feel like that has a certain subtlety to it that I feel would be consistent with the way that these games reveal lore.
So we get to the final night and we finally figure out, like, oh, the boss was the bad guy the whole time.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So so the scooper scoops us.
Okay.
And tears out all of our guts the way that it's supposed to tear out the endoskeleton of a robot.
Yeah.
All of the animatronics, Baby's been lying to us and tricking us the entire time.
Okay.
Baby and all the other animatronics link all their pieces together to create this clown guy on the left here. His name is Ennard, a combination of endoskeleton and innards. So Ennard, after they scoop out our guts and our skeleton and bones, crawls inside of us and wears us like a mascot suit so that he can pass for human on the surface.
Yeah, that's very grotesque.
So,
do we see this?
Yes, we
It
do.
seems very gory and upsetting. Yeah.
So this is the purple guy, the one that was the odd one out from a very long time ago.
Yeah.
So we get these scenes of him walking down the street, and as the days pass on, he decomposes. So here he's normal, here he's turning a little gray, here he's a shambling, purple, bruised, rotting corpse.
Yeah.
And eventually the body falls apart so much that we see Ennard escaping through his throat and down into the sewer for safety.
Okay.
And then the guy we're playing as miraculously stands up, and he seems totally fine. Ooh.
That's interesting, because this seems like it's the origin story of the purple guy.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that can't be the case, because the purple guy is William, who's this other guy doing his own thing, and
This
that
is...
the purple representation seemingly like was just a stylized representation of a normal human. But this seems like it's complicating that, because this implies that William and the purple guy are two different people, and that the purple guy is this kind of hollow skin abomination.
So that problem is 100% correct. The same way that Markiplier thought that the Bite of 83 was the Bite of 87 because it wasn't really following along with like the lore. A lot of people saw this as the origin of the purple guy. Because, this is why he's purple. But no, as we talked about, it was the purple guy it was William, who created the animatronics. And so this person that we're playing as must be someone else. And they are literally purple, whereas William is, depicted as purple. So this did cause confusion for people, but again, Matpat was able to, set it right and be like, no, that doesn't work for this reason and that reason. But it is very interesting that Scott Cawthon decided to make a second purple person.
Yeah, that seems like bad. I
Yeah.
feel like that's needlessly confusing to make a second purple character who looks so much like the first purple character, unless he was just intentionally trying to screw with the audience.
Potentially.
But yeah, but we only see this hideous creature in the pixelated mode. We don't see
Correct. So here's the next question. Who are we playing as in Sister Location? Is it Mike from FNAF 1, Jeremy from FNAF 2, Fritz from FNAF 2, the unnamed night guard from FNAF 3, or Foxy Bro from FNAF 4? William's son.
Well, considering that he's like killed, I feel like it can't be one of the other sort of employee characters. I feel like it would have to be Foxy Bro. Hold on, let me look at my notes here.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be Foxy Bro, right?
Hmm.
Or is it? It's got to be one of those last two, I think.
Remember, the unnamed night guard, that game was like 2015 or possibly 2023. So that's like decades and decades into the future.
Yeah. That's right. So why would that guy be this monster creature? That doesn't make sense. He's just a normal guy.
Yep.
And if this skin monster character is created early in the timeline, then that means that logically, I feel like he should be Foxy Bro.
So this is what happens to Foxy Bro after FNAF 4?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the big reveal. Are you ready?
Okay.
Foxy Bro was Mike Schmidt and has been the guard in almost all the games. Mike Schmidt, the guard from FNAF 1, was Foxy Bro, who accidentally killed his brother, and then went on to try to fight back and not redeem his father, but redeem his family by defeating his father. It was a 1v1 boss fight, him versus his father in FNAF 3.
I don't like this development. I don't like the direct. No, this is not a good. No, I don't like this. It makes the previous stories seem, I don't know, like too arch and too sort of. Yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. It kind of like saps the. I'm trying to think of like how to articulate this. It's like the original stories were fun because they were kind of connected to the human world, right? Like to the real world. Like the protagonists were just ordinary people that were, kind of avatars for the audience themselves. It's kind of like, well, how would you be if you were sort of put in this preposterous location and you had to deal with these crazy machines trying to kill you? And, like he's a stand-in for the everyman. And if he's not, in fact, a stand-in for the everyman, then if he's just actually this canonical character who's on this like long, elaborate journey as the lore of the universe, I don't know. I find that somewhat unsatisfying. Like that sort of takes something from the earlier games, and it just kind of makes it a little too pat. Like I said,
we didn't have any characters until this game.
Yeah.
Up until now, it's been we're Mike Schmidt. Where's that name come from? Scott picked two of the most common first and last name and just made a guy.
Yeah.
He's Joe Everyman. Now we see all the characters have been Foxy Bro. Accidentally gets his brother killed. His father's a serial killer. So Schmidt would obviously be a pseudonym because his real last name would be Afton. So that's sort of the additional piece of evidence that he was Fritz Smith, because if he's already using pseudonyms, then he was probably doing it then too. So at the beginning of Sister Location, we learn that the name of our character is Mike, and then when we beat the game, we get this speech from Mike. So this is right after he's been ennard has left him, and he's now a shambling skin monster. He says this.
Father, it's me, Michael. I did it. I found it. It was right where you said it would be. They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you. And I found her. I put her back together, just like you asked me to. She's free now. But something is wrong with me. I should be dead, but I'm not. I've been living in shadows. There is only one thing left for me to do now. I'm going to come find you. I'm going to come find you.
So that there at the end, that was the burned down horror attraction from FNAF 3 and then
Yes.
Springtrap sitting up. So
Okay.
big hint for the next game.
Okay. But it's, I don't know, it's just, there's something weird about this. So it's like, he was like this kind of like skinless beast. And then they're like, who's making the decision to like hire him to this place? It's, so, well, this seems a little odd to me. It makes the previous game seem, I don't know, it just makes the previous game seem very strange to sort of see them from that perspective, that it wasn't just like a normal, you know, American guy just running the, you know, doing this sort of preposterous job and being afraid and listening to the instructions from the phone and all the rest of it. It was instead this, I don't know, this monster who's the child of the killer who is trying to redeem
himself because
redeem himself in the eyes of his dad, and you know, he's
when
guilt
he,
for killing the kid, and it's
when-
just, it's so kind of turning in on itself, the lore, you know, it's the TV tropes people, I think they call it like the Cerberus syndrome, you know, like when the lore becomes so convoluted and kind of like this Ouroboros that's kind of like eating itself, right? Like it's I feel like we've now kind of crossed that line in FNAF lore.
Yeah,
If I was a hardcore, I'd be like one of these people that doesn't accept this continuity. I was happier, you know, with FNAF 4. I don't like this twist.
Yep.
But anyway, so yeah.
Yep. Now it's, you know, when Mike Schmidt sees Golden Freddy in FNAF 1 and, you know, the words "it's me" pops up on screen. That's not a spooky meta thing where a ghost is reaching through the game to the player. That's the ghost of his brother who he accidentally got killed trying to reach out to him. Golden Freddy is, you know, his younger brother, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And
yeah.
all of the characters. So Jeremy, random guy who gets bitten, but every other protagonist in the games is Foxy bro trying to like hunt down his father. He's following his father's trail. You know, there's only one thing left for me to do. I need to come find you. Trying to follow the trail of his father's murders to find him, to stop his dad, and, you know, redeem himself for accidentally getting his brother killed.
Do we ever see? I already asked you this, but do we ever see him, the Foxy bro, like what he looks like as this skinless zombie?
So
With the
no.
skin? No.
We will. There's a very strong implication that he does not remain as the skinless zombie, and he heals to look totally normal. And that is hinted at in the next game, where the reason that, as you kind of said before, like, who's hiring this skin zombie? It's explained basically that the force that allows ghosts to haunt animatronics is literally life force. And so because the scoop scoops out the animatronic's endoskeleton, there's residue of life force on the scoop. So when it injects him, he stays alive and is able to heal because he's literally been injected with life force.
Okay. And then the life force eventually heals him completely.
Heals him completely, yep.
And then he's just like a normal human dude again.
Normal human dude. Much older though.
Oh, we didn't.
Because
Much
he
older,
was
yeah.
he was probably born in like 1970, so he's in his 40s or 50s by the next game in the 2020s.
But then why does he need the phone guy to explain things to him? Like, wouldn't he just like know all of this stuff already? Like, he'd be very familiar with animatronics.
The phone guy didn't know that the person he was talking to is the son of the killer. He's just, I'm leaving, because he's using a pseudonym.
Well, why was phone guy ever necessary then? Like,
so
what
the idea would be that he goes to the Circus Baby Entertainment and Rental because his father told him to put his sister back together. which he nebulously does, not entirely sure really what that means, but Baby would be his sister, but Baby didn't know that it was him, which is why she, killed him, or tried to kill him. Yeah. So then he would go to FNAF 2, right after the Bite of 87 to be Fritz, and he gets fired on his first day. The location closes that day because of the Bite of 87. A couple of years pass, and Phone Guy is finally retiring, so he uses that as the ability to then go and become the night guard at FNAF 1. He gets fired. Okay. That location closes. 20 or so years pass. The horror attraction opens up. He becomes the night guard there. And then when he verifies that the monster is his father, he burns the whole thing down.
Okay. See, I feel like for the purposes of the franchise, it would be useful if Mike became an animatronic himself at some point, because then there would be a new character, and then the whole family would be animatronics, and that would be nice too.
We'll maybe touch on that later. There's only one more game left that we're going to be talking about.
Okay,
but we might touch on that topic.
Okay.
So the big reveal is that we've been Mike the whole time. This whole story is not just random facts and dates. We've actually been following a single family and the redemption of Foxy Bro. Some miscellaneous facts about the sister location game. Mike gets a job there, and he says he's going to put her back together just like you asked me to. Putting someone back together is the same phrase that the Fredbear plush says to the crying child as he's dying, and that we're told to do in FNAF World. So putting someone back together seems to be having someone's spirit control an animatronic. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I've resurrected you as a robot because it's all Frankenstein. So you're now back together. You're now sort of in control of your robot. It's not clear when Sister Location is set, but we kind of talked about this a little. It seems to be before FNAF 2 that he then goes off and does all of his little adventures. The little bullet point I have marked as confusing lore is that the books and Sister Location introduce the concept of a substance called remnant, which is what your soul leaves behind in your body, which is why if you put your body into a suit, your remnant is what animates that suit. Okay. You can take part of your remnant and put it somewhere else. So if William brought the animatronics to life by putting the bodies in there, he was able to remove part of their remnant and put it into the Funtime animatronics. So it's not that Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora are each a new murder victim. It's that they're animated by the life force of the original 5 kids.
Okay.
So even though the toys and the classics all burned up in FNAF 3, some of their soul is still in the Funtime animatronics. So they're still tethered to Earth. And we got to deal with them too. We got to destroy the Funtime so the kids can move on. And the remnant or the life force being on the scoop is what allows Mike to heal and to, go back to being normal, because he was literally injected with the metaphysical life energy that creates people and is soul magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel like with each game, we're kind of getting more insane?
Yeah, I would say so. The thought that's just coming into my head is I'm just kind of imagining you having a very vigorous debate with someone about some of the finer points of this kind of stuff.
I do.
That there's some sort of dispute, and you have your textual points that you can point to and say, well, actually, I think this is very obviously that this is how it happens. And somebody else is like, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. Why? Blah, 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 blah. Loopholes and plot holes and contradictions. And you're citing the authority of the books, but we've agreed that the books are not canon, and this kind of stuff, right?
You're describing every day of my life. It's not an exaggeration.
Wow. Yes. Ennard. Hold on.
Yep.
Endo?
Ennard.
Or is it Ennard?
Endo mixed with innards. Ennard.
What is... Oh, because endo is endoskeleton. Yeah.
So
Ennard is...
Yeah.
Ennard is the name of the character.
Ennard is the name of the character, which is Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, Ballora, and babies,
Yeah.
endoskeletons mixed together
Yeah.
as one being
Hmm.
called ennard.
Yeah. Everyone mixed together. So it's all of the dead children plus the dead sister,
Yes.
one thing
Yes.
that went inside him. So that was really like peak moment when they were all inside the same.
Yes.
Yeah, it's when they were possessing Foxy Bro, because then it's like, okay, like most of the major characters are now sort of glommed together, except for the other brother who was in the Golden Freddy.
Yep. As well as except for the puppet.
And the puppet. Who's possessing the puppet again?
Henry, the other founder's daughter.
Okay. Dead children to keep track of.
A lot of dead children to keep track of.
Does Henry ever become in a machine?
Besides Henry being named in the books, he's only present in the games insofar as there was a guy who founded Freddy's. We call him Henry because we have no other name to call him.
Okay.
This will actually make more sense after the final game because it kind of summarizes everything. So I promise.
Let's get into the final game then.
I promise it'll be a little easier. We basically just did this as the timeline. Michael accidentally gets his brother killed. William promises to put Dave back together. He kills Henry's daughter in revenge. His own child then, his own robot kills his own daughter. He kills 5 kids at Freddy's and puts their bodies in suits. They're never found. The animatronics become haunted. Years later, William returns to take the suits apart. The ghosts come out and chase him into the Bonnie suit, which crushes him to death ironically. He is trapped for decades until a horror attraction is opened and people find him back there. Meanwhile, Mike has been traveling to different Freddy's as a security guard under pseudonyms. At one point, he goes to his father's workshop at Circus Babies to put Baby back together. This has him get scooped, so ennard wears him around and then escapes, and then he eventually heals. He eventually becomes the night guard at the horror attraction. He faces off against his father. He burns it down, but Springtrap survives. Okay.
Yes, this is a slide I will have to refer back to on.
Yes. I will send you this whole.
occasions.
I will send you this whole presentation when we're done.
Okay,
Yep.
why are they British? Is that ever explored?
So the voice actor literally just said, "I wanted to give William a Hannibal Lecter voice."
But
That
Mike is British as well.
Yes. So we do hear the daughter speaking in the game as well. They're all British, which obviously when you immigrate to America, right? Like sometimes the kids will grow up with their parents' accent and then like lose it over time or keep it into adulthood. I think it's good that they're British from I'm trying to solve the game's perspective, because if I hear a British accent, I go, okay, that's William's kid. I understand that it's his kid now because he has the British accent. But it's literally, it's just the trope of British people are evil.
Well, I mean, it adds a sort of like, I suppose, somewhat interesting kind of cultural dimension to it as well. Like the idea that this is an immigrant family trying to make it in America, but things go so terribly, terribly wrong. As they try to, in some ways, like assimilate to something as classically American as the animatronic pizza parlor. So
yes. And then they get assimilated into the animatronics themselves, and it's actually commentary on the American melting pot.
Very good.
Yes,
that's a fresh take, right?
Well, all the kids get combined together into the goop of remnant and then into the ennard. No.
Yes.
That might be something that I would like make a video on, to be like, let me tell you guys how to read books. But yeah, it's literally just the voice actor was like, okay, I need to voice the bad guy. British.
Yes.
That's as much thought as went into it.
Yes.
For example, when Matthew Lillard, who plays William in the movie, does not have a British accent. That's not something that carries over. All right, so Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, or FNAF 6, came out in December of 2017. It's called this because Scott basically lied. He said, hey guys, FNAF 6 is still a really far ways away, so I'm making a small little mini game where you can sort of build your own pizzeria, like Farmville, or just that kind of simulator game. He's like, it's going to be available for free, you don't need to pay for it. So you download Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, and then surprise, it was actually FNAF 6 the whole time. So that's why it has such an odd name. So in FNAF 6, are we playing as Mike like we are in every other game? Yes, of course we are, or no for some reason.
No, for some reason.
Yes, of course we are.
Oh wow! There goes me trying to have a
Trying to be
contrarian
witty.
take on this.
Yes, because FNAF is the story of Mike.
Yes.
FNAF 6 is set after FNAF 3, so this is after the fire where he thought he defeated Springtrap, but didn't actually. Mike gets a job there. He is instructed by a mysterious man who only leaves him instructions via cassette tape, and he's supposed to check the back alleyway of the restaurant every night because animatronics might show up at the back door.
Okay. So this is happening even after FNAF 3.
Yes, this is the furthest into
Yes.
the future than we've gone so far.
And yet somebody is still opening these FNAF locations.
Well, FNAF, the last restaurant closed in the early 90s. Decades later, people opened this horror attraction based on the nostalgic memories of this terrible place. And now a new restaurant is opened. So it's very interesting that someone was able to do that. Interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Why would
it's
somebody
so
do such a thing?
it's
Try and
funny
revive this horrible brand associated with child murder. Somebody's like, I think that is kind of odd.
it's so funny that you're catching dangling plot threads that, like, when you're playing the full game, you're like supposed to pull on, and you as just like average adult are like, that's weird. What does that mean? I can read. Yeah.
Yes.
So this is one of the animatronics you find in the back alley. The one on the right is what we find in the game. The one on the left is Baby from FNAF 5. So the question is this Baby?
No. Is it a new take on Baby?
I will give you that. So this is Scrap Baby. So yes, it is Baby. The idea is that when Ennard left Mike, we learned this lore I'm about to tell you from Scott's website. If you go to scott.com and you hit F11 and you open the source code, you can scroll past all the actual encoding for the website and find a conversation between Baby and Ennard, where Ennard says, actually, Baby, we don't like you anymore because you're the murderer's daughter. And she says, fine, I'll go on my own. And then she leaves Ennard. That was told in the source code of Scott's website. So she goes and she fixes herself up, and she's now Scrap Baby.
Okay. Is Ennard really big?
Ennard is huge. So Baby, I'll probably send you this. I'll send you this in a few minutes. They made a life-size Baby for the FNAF movie because she was in the second movie. And Ennard would probably be like 4 times the size of Baby. I think Baby's supposed to like canonically be like 8 feet tall or something. But yeah, the idea that he can fit himself into, Mike is obviously silly and crazy, and the whole thing. It's a dark fantasy satirical world where you just have to kind of accept this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you have to accept quite a lot.
Quite a lot.
So, have you ever got to see any of the movie props?
Yes. So in Orlando Universal Park, they have the yearly Halloween Horror Nights. So they're haunted houses. So like there's one for Jason Voorhees. There's one for the Terrifier movies. There's one from the Fallout TV show. So this year they had a Five Nights at Freddy's haunted house. So me and a bunch of other YouTubers flew to Orlando just to go see the FNAF haunted house. And they had the movie Animatronics there as animatronics in the haunted house.
It's been quite a thrill to see, eh?
Yes, yeah. I think my audience knows this. I don't think they'll be upset if I say this, but like, I like FNAF, but it's not something I grew up with. I don't have this like incredible. If I saw R2-D2, right, like that would be fall to my knees religious experience. Seeing Freddy Fazbear is just like, hey, that's cool. It's a movie prop. FNAF is my job. It's not my like, my obsession.
Yeah. But it would still be, I feel like it would just be kind of cool to kind of like see these things in real life.
Yes.
Right? Like to be able to sort of conceptualize what it would be like to actually interact with these things the way that the characters in the story do. Like to see it in the flesh, So
and they're masterpieces of engineering, like that they made for the movie. They made these functional life-size animatronics, and it's incredible. but it wasn't, you know, the 6-year-olds who grew up on FNAF, you know, again, they see Freddy Fazbear and they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, yeah, this is pretty cool, but it's not like meeting Shigeru Miyamoto or something, right? It's not like my childhood icon is in front of me.
No,
but yeah, it was definitely very cool. So yes, this is Baby after years coming to the outside of this restaurant for some reason. So is this Springtrap? This next one that we find outside.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't know how long it's been since FNAF 3, and his suit has obviously deteriorated more, but this is still William Afton in the Spring Bonnie suit. Is this Ennard?
Yes. This is Ennard Sans Baby.
Ennard Sans Baby?
Yeah.
So that is the absolutely correct answer. So the reason that both yes and no are green is because when Ennard is Sans Baby, his name becomes Molten Freddy, because he's like a big Freddy that's been melted, but it is literally just Ennard Sans Baby.
Okay.
So
Sans Baby becomes Molten Freddy.
Yes, he puts on a Freddy mask instead of the clown mask he was wearing, but this is still the conglomeration of Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora, who just have their wires and their endos all mixed together, like a big spaghetti monster.
One thing that I realized from the Solar Sands video on Scott Cawthan's career was that Scott seems like he's always kind of had a bit of a fixation on like really kind of grotesque robots, like
Definitely.
ones that are very, like very wiry and, you know, kind of unsettling looking, kind of H.R. Geiger-esque.
Yep.
And I feel like as the series has progressed, he kind of gets to indulge in this kind of grotesque fascination of his in a more and more extreme way, where the robots just keep getting more wiry and more kind of like, I don't know, sinewy, like more kind of anatomical and sort of unsettling in this way. And it kind of feels like this is the logical endpoint, where eventually you create a creation that's just nothing but like wires and sinew and, you know, doesn't even begin to resemble anything animatronic at all. It's just like kind of a pure machine nightmare, you know, what do they call it? Eldritch abomination.
Yes, it's literally like just the essence of robotics as a character, as opposed to anything that seems to have any sort of functional form. So like on Ennard, you can see the different characters' eyeballs are just like stuck randomly all throughout him, and then on Molten Freddy over here, the eyeballs are still just like part of the design. So yeah, so this game has 4 animatronics, so the 4th one is this Golden Freddy.
Okay. Yes.
No, I tricked you, obviously.
No!
Certainly not Golden Freddy at all. So this is Lefty. If you look really closely to where my giant red arrow is pointing, you can see that underneath Lefty is the striped arm of the puppet.
Okay.
So Lefty is an acronym, and it stands for Lure, Encapsulate, Fuse, Transport, Extract. It is meant to seek out the puppet, encapsulate it within the suit, fuse so it can't leave, bring it to the pizzeria, and then extract. What does that mean? I don't know. You can see in this piece of art, there's a poster in the back alleyway of the puppet screaming, being very angry. So this screaming puppet poster seems to be like a manifestation of how angry the puppet is being trapped inside of Lefty.
Hold on, but I thought the point of Lefty is to capture the puppet.
Captured the puppet, brought it to the pizzeria.
Oh, so it already, okay.
It is already inside there.
It was designed to capture the puppet, and it did this.
Yes. Sometime before the game, it did this.
So she's inside of him. Okay,
yes.
I get it.
So it was designed to bring the puppet to Freddy's, but by who? We'll get back to that in a moment. In FNAF 6, there are 3 mini games that you can play that will tell you lore, because it's it's kind of like a tycoon game where you're building up your own restaurant. What you do is you buy cabinets, arcade cabinets to put in the corner, and then it's like, that increased your income for today. So which of these 3 games are real arcade games that we have to play in FNAF 6? Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Midnight Motorist, Coils the Lemonade Clown, Fruity Maze, Security Puppet, Chipper and Son's Lumber Ladder, or Undertale?
um, maybe all of them except for Undertale.
So only 3 of them. I'll tell you that. Only 3 of them
Only 3?
are real.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then I would say Chipper and Sons. That seems like that could be a fun nod to the past.
Mhm.
Maybe Balloon Boy and maybe Coils. All the ones basically that have names of characters in them.
You got that completely wrong. It was
terrible.
It was the other 3, obviously. Fruity Maze. So we'll go through this really quickly. So Fruity Maze is a Pac-Man style game, but the dots are all dead dogs. And upon winning, you get the scene where the girl who's playing the game is this girl with like blonde curls and she's crying. And we see William come up behind her and say, "Your dog's not dead. He's in the back room. Come with me." And so this is telling us the lore that the way that he killed the Chica girl is because she was sad that her doggy died, and he lied to her and lured her to the back.
Did he make the game specifically to lure her?
It's a great question. In universe, is this game actually depicting dead dogs, or is that just sort of something that we're seeing because we're watching it? We don't know. I would have to imagine that in 1985, when Susie was playing this game, it was actually just Pac-Man. But who knows? Because everything is through layers of abstraction and ghost magic.
Okay, but this is telling the backstory of one of the murdered kids.
Correct.
But it's being told in a game that takes place like long after that.
Yeah, like 40 years later.
So is this just like a flashback motif?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the mini games are almost always telling us things that happened in the distant past. So the next game, which is Security Puppet, we play as the puppet and a child gets locked outside, and then we go outside and we find the child dead on the ground. This is just a retelling of the minigame from FNAF 2 with the cake bear with your favorite. So this is us from the puppet's perspective finding when William killed Henry's daughter and how the puppet became possessed. You can see here that the puppet's not have any tear stains on its mask because it's not yet possessed by a child who was crying tears.
Oh.
It's very, on your screen it might be really hard to see. No, it's not crying yet.
Yeah, because, and if I remember like way back a million slides ago, you showed me the picture of like the sprite of the crying children, and they have like the big black sort of bars coming out of their eyes, just like the puppet does.
Yes.
So that's kind of a nod to that, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. I was expecting this game to tell the backstory of another murdered child.
Well, Henry's daughter is another child.
But this is the puppet's murdered child, not one of the other ones from the big four.
So the next game, I'm going to try to do this as least complicated as possible. But so this is called Midnight Motorist. This is incomprehensible, and nobody knows what it means to this day. Okay. The main thing from a cultural osmosis standpoint you need to know is just that Midnight Motorist is something that nobody understands. So the same thing with the FNAF 4 box. No one knows Midnight Motorist. So the game starts, and you're a purple car driving through the woods. So immediately, purple car driving through the woods, you're purple guy. You can stop along in this clearing and get out of your car, and it turns out that you're an orange guy. And you can walk around this clearing, and there's a mound of dirt in the middle of the clearing for some reason. And there's nothing else to do here, and you leave. And you can drive up to a building that's called JR's or Junior's. We don't know, and we don't know what this building is. And you can get out of your car and walk over, and there's a green guy here, and he says, "Hey man, you know the rules, you can't come in here." So you get back in your car, and you drive down the road, and you come to a house. And you go into the house, and there's someone watching TV, and they say, like, "Hey, can you go easy on your son tonight? He had a rough day." And you walk to the back of the house, and there's a door, and you yell at your son to come out, and he won't answer the door. So you go around back of the house, and you see that his window is smashed open. And it's going to be hard for you to see, but there's footprints leading away from his window. And then right here are 2 animal or possibly animatronic footprints in the bushes. And when you see this, your orange character goes, "Ran off to that place again. He will be sorry when he gets back." And then the minigame ends.
I mean, my thinking would be that this is the backstory of another one of the 4 murdered kids. that maybe he comes from some sort of broken home
Mhm.
where the father can't go to the bar because he's such a troublemaker, and then the kid has once again escaped to maybe go to Freddy Fazbear's, the only place where he likes to spend time because his home life is so bad. How's that for a take? Is that a reasonably mainstream interpretation?
No. Remember when I told
No.
you that I had an interpretation that was not mainstream and it was about who an
Yeah.
orange person was?
Yeah.
So me and you would be the only people in the entire fandom with that interpretation. I agree with what you just said 100%. I think that these footprints here are William in the spring Bonnie costume going to this kid's window who's, his father is abusive, and he's like, hey, Jimmy, break out of the window, let's go to Freddy's together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lures him to Freddy's and kills him. And so when the dad says he'll be sorry when he gets back, it's irony because his son's not coming back, his son's dead.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense, and because I feel like that, because I feel like the way that this was sort of leading me to believe, the way that you've sort of told me so far, is that we're going to hear the backstory of how all of the 4 kids like died at the hands of William in their own unique way, right? Like that they were sort of poached and they were exploited. William sort of exploited some sort of trauma in their life to kind of build up a rapport that he was then able to take advantage of to kill them, right? And so it would make sense. The first girl, we hear about, the problem with the dead dog. The second kid, it's an escape from an abusive household. And then I don't know, the other 2 kids probably have stories of their own too, right? Like I don't know if we're going to see more of that, but
we're not. And that's one of the arguments against this being the orange guy being the father of one of the missing kids, is that why did we learn about 2 of them but not the other 2?
Yeah.
So it leads people to think that maybe this is something else. So the mainstream opinion is that the orange guy is William. He's driving a purple car. He gets out of his purple car. He's inexplicably orange. We don't know what Junior's is. Maybe it's a Freddy's location. Maybe it's a bar. And the kid who locked himself in his room and then ran away would be Foxy Bro, Michael. And he's running to Freddy's, but we don't know when this is taking place. We don't know how old Michael is. There's footprints in the bushes. Whose footprints are they? We don't know. Some people think Golden Freddy teleported there, or it's that shadow guy from FNAF 2 that we have no idea what it means. So like there are interpretations of what this is that can fit basically any conclusion you want to get to, but no one can agree on who any of these pixely people are representing. I'm very confident in my answer, and the same one that you gave, because my starting point would be, if this is supposed to be purple guy, he would be purple.
Yeah. And it also just doesn't make sense, like why Foxy Bro would run off to his father's, business, right?
Well, maybe the inexplicable mound of dirt in the woods, maybe that's his little brother's grave. Maybe they hid the fact that he died, and so he's running off to that grave again. There's lots of interpretation. I'm glad that your gut feeling was my gut feeling, but there's definitely lots of answers to this.
Because I feel like just the lore of this stuff is so convoluted, and like the one remaining thing that we don't know, at least what I don't know, having been led through this saga, is like who the 4 murdered kids are, like what their backstories are. And it sort of seems like this would be a logical time to begin sort of introducing those backstories. And we already have had one, the girl.
Yep. This game came out, I think it's at 2017. So in the 8 years since then, we have not learned any more about either the other 2 or the other 3 kids. We've really only learned about the blonde girl. Yeah. Which is very odd. So that's all the lore mini games. So here's the big question to see if you've been paying attention. Who is the man who opened this new Freddy's location, who hired Mike anonymously, who's leaving instructions on a cassette tape to bring William Elizabeth, the puppet, and the conglomeration of the MCI kids into the restaurant?
I don't know, like, would it be just William again? Like, I don't know, or unless it's, I don't know, is it William, or is it maybe Phone Guy?
Well, Phone Guy died.
I don't know. Pardon me?
Phone Guy died back in 1992.
When did? Oh, right. Sorry.
Unless
What
it's
did he
like his
die
ghost or
from?
something. The animatronics killed him. That was like question 2. I know it was 3 hours ago.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Sorry, so it can't be phone guys. So it has to either be like William or who else could it be? I mean, who's another character? Who am I forgetting?
Well, remember, William is the murderer purple guy who's in
Yeah.
the Springtrap suit.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that he couldn't also have
That is true.
opened the location. I don't know what to believe about anything anymore. Maybe he has a
Ghost
maybe
magic.
he poses as a human or something. I don't know. I mean, the only other sort of like humanoid character would be Henry, right?
Mm-hmm. The puppet's father.
If Henry is still around, I guess he could be doing it too. I mean, I don't quite know what his motivation is, unless, I mean, he's trying to save the daughter from the puppet. I don't know. Is it Henry?
It's Henry. It's the only other character.
Yeah, pretty much.
The business partner and the father of his first victim who became the puppet.
Yeah, okay.
So the gameplay is you're Mike and you're building up the pizzeria and you let the animatronics in, and at night they try to get into your office and you have to fend them off. And then when the animatronics kill you, they'll sometimes say something that is implying lore. So if Baby kills you, she might say, it feels just like home. And that's because it's the brother and the sister being reunited. So that's sort of giving you information that you're playing as Mike. Springtrap, if William kills you, he says something to the effect of like, I knew that this was a trap I was walking into, but I walked into it anyway because I wanted to see what was so interesting about this building. So it's sort of telling you that maybe this restaurant that you're working in has been a trap. And the cassette man always seems like he's really, really set on you bringing the animatronics inside. He's like, hey, you cannot leave them in the back alley, you got to bring them inside, which gives you the indication that maybe he has a reason to want to do this. So maybe he's Henry. So when you beat the final night, this happens.
You played right into our hands. Did you really think that this job just fell out of the sky for you? No. This was a gift for us. You gathered them all together in one place, just like he asked you to. All of those little souls in one place, just for us. A gift. Now we can do what we were created to do and be complete. I will make you proud, Daddy. Watch, listen, and be full.
Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elizabeth, if you still even remember that name, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a gift, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here, into a labyrinth of sounds and smells, misdirection, and misfortune. A labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Your lust for blood has driven you in endless circles, chasing the cries of children in some unseen chamber, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them. None of you will. This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out planned for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I am nearby. This place will not be remembered, and the memory of everything that started this can finally begin to fade away, as the agony of every tragedy should. And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still, and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace, and perhaps more, waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, friend. My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent. I'm sorry that on that day, the day you were shut out and left to die, no one was there to lift you up into their arms the way you lifted others into yours. And And then, what became of you? I should have known you wouldn't be content to disappear. Not my daughter. I couldn't save you then, so let me save you now. It's time to rest, for you, and for those you have carried in your arms. This ends, for all of us, in communication.
So, Henry is seeking to, like, destroy all of these characters once and for all.
He burns everything down. Burns the restaurant. So the Molten Freddy, who had all the remaining kids in him.
Yes.
Baby, who has Elizabeth. Springtrap, who has William, and then the puppet, which has his daughter, all burn. He kills himself as well. He implies that when he hired a manager for the building, he just intended it to be some random guy to set everything up, and then they could escape. But once he realized it was Mike, he's like, oh, I mean, you're part of this too. You probably want to die after all these years. So yeah, the series ends with everyone burning, all the souls are released, William is finally defeated, and that's how the game ends.
And the whole ridiculous saga has been brought to a close.
Yes, the memory of the tragedy has faded, as all tragedy should.
Yes, and it's all sort of wrapped up nicely. And there's no horror movie final scene where, like, the hand reaches out from the grave. No.
So thankfully, no.
Okay.
Unthankfully, when they then decided to make more games, they had to do something even stupider. So I will say that when you finish watching that little scene, we get this shot of a graveyard. And so we see the gravestones. And so we have Gabriel, Fritz, Susie, and Jeremy. So those are the 4 kids who are in Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Chica. The Jeremy is not the Jeremy who is the Bite of 87. Totally different Jeremy. The Fritz is not the Fritz who was in FNAF 2. Totally different Fritz. And that's another reason why this game is confusing, because everyone has the same name.
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah.
Intentional gibberish. There's a 5th gravestone here that is obscured by leaves. We cannot read what it says. When this came out, like when Markiplier got to the scene the first time, he's like, I don't know what any of that meant. It took using that scene to then go back and comb over the franchise to comprehend everything that I've been explaining to you for 3.5 hours, which is the puppet is the same girl who was murdered outside, is the daughter, and the baby is the Elizabeth, and blah, blah, blah. So that really was Scott saying, here's the answers, but you still need to kind of see where they fit.
Yes.
You can unlock blueprints that tell us directly that the scooper is a remnant installer, so that's why Mike was able to survive, because he was injected with life force. This was supposed to be the final game in the franchise. Ha 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 ha. And we see the gravestones of all the dead kids, but one is obscured. So there was a game that came out shortly after this called Ultimate Custom Night, which is just a free play mode where Scott programmed in every animatronic with all of their, the things you have to do to defeat them, right? You have to check Pirate's Code for Foxy, you need to wind the music box for the puppet, etc. And so it's not supposed to be, like, it's not continuing the story, it's just a fun side game. Except if you pay really close attention, the animatronics will, like, say voice lines, and you can figure out that you're playing as William. So this is your eternal punishment you're facing against all of your victims who are now tormenting you forever. So that's very cool sort of, final note to end the franchise on. There was a puzzle book, like word searches and crosswords and stuff that was released. And if you solve the cipher, you get the names Dave and Cassidy. Dave for the crying child. So again, it took us 10 years to learn that name. And we believe that Cassidy is that obscured gravestone, and that he or she, because it's a gender neutral name, would be Golden Freddy, would be the kid that was shoved in Golden Freddy.
Okay.
Scott stepped back from making the games. He'd made all of these all by himself. After this, he contracted a studio called Steel Wool to make the rest of the FNAF games, and he just kind of comes up with the concept for the story, and then they make the games, and then he became busy making the movie. Their games are very buggy. A big game called Security Breach came out that was like a Metroidvania type game. It was delayed due to COVID. When it came out, it was a horrible buggy mess. You couldn't beat it. There were glitches everywhere. The story was terrible. People did not like the game, and so people sort of said, Five Nights at Freddy's is dead because the new game sucks. And we're still trying to come out of that era where a really, really, really bad game almost tanked the franchise. And Scott's no longer writing it. So when there were some details that were put in the game that people said, this contradicts what we thought was happening. And Scott goes, oh yeah, they put that in there without my permission. So as if this whole thing hasn't been super complicated, now it's even more complicated because an artist might put in something that goes against Scott's intention.
This is the one with the crocodile character?
Yes, the crocodile character, Monty. You know him?
I just know him from toys, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like, yeah, I've seen this kind of like, this cast of sort of, yeah, very 80s kind of neon characters.
They're called the glamrocks. Glamrock animatronics. There have been 2 movies. The first one got mixed reviews because it was not a very good movie, so critics gave it mixed scores, but the audience either loved it because they said Freddy's on the big screen, or hated it because the movie is mainly about the drama between some human characters who aren't from the games. There's like this brother and sister, and the sister has the shining, and she can talk to ghosts, and so he has to go to Freddy's, and she befriends the kids, and it's this whole thing. So a lot of people said, this isn't the FNAF movie I wanted. So the second movie just came out, and I won't harp on this for too long, but Scott sort of took the criticism of the first one, where it was focusing too much on the humans instead of just showing the animatronics doing cool things. And so the second movie is much more about the animatronics just killing people versus telling an actual story. So the critics gave it an even lower review. It currently has a 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is unheard of. And I hated it because I'm like, I want to watch a film. I don't want to watch Toy Chica killing people. But a lot of the fans are like, this is exactly what I wanted. I wanted to see the animatronics, period. The end of sentence. I wanted to see the thing I know in a movie. And then just to get a little bit into the books, we don't have to read these like last 7 paragraphs, but the books were telling this story about this guy named Edwin and how his wife died in childbirth. And then he built a robot called the Mimic, which can mimic an animatronic's dance routine without having to be programmed. And then his son dies in a car accident. And so he takes his anger out on the Mimic, and now the Mimic knows anger and violence, and so it goes and kills people. And people thought that this character would show up in the games. And they start advertising the next game, the one that came out about 6 months ago, as being about Edwin and the Mimic. And so people are saying, yes, the books are canon. The books were telling the backstory of this Edwin guy. And then we play the game, and it completely contradicts the books. His wife did not die in childbirth. She died in a fire, and she actually possesses the Mimic, and then she tries to raise her son as the robot, but then the son dies too, and so Edwin builds a second Mimic so that he can bring back both members of his family as these robots. And it's just a completely different story using the name of the same character. So that's how we know the books aren't canon, is because of the Mimic. The end.
Well, I certainly feel up to speed on the FNAF lore now, I must say.
Yes.
And what a twisting journey it has been. So many unexpected sojourns and shockers and revelations. It's I'd say it's even more convoluted than I anticipated.
That's incredible.
I was expecting some degree of complicated nonsense, but this has really sort of taken it to a new level. I don't know. It really sort of overall comes off as one of these things where like it was clearly not planned out ahead of time.
100%.
And so it's like Scott is just kind of like making it up as he goes along, and then really kind of having to kind of work very hard to make all of the previous stuff fit with new ideas that he has and make it all sort of clean up in a sort of tidy way. And in some ways, like there feels like there's kind of like it's a sort of poetic ending that it just ends with the whole thing being burned to ash. It's just like, to hell with this, like enough, you know, and wanting to kind of like move on.
Yep.
So I don't know, like it certainly doesn't seem like it's a great story. Like it's not going to be remembered as, I think, one of the great, cultural tales of our time, but
it's so popular that I think it will.
Well, I mean, I think the characters will. Like, I mean, my impression from the outside is that, like, the great sort of strength of FNAF is these characters that are very distinctive and, creatively designed and memorable and all of that. But the lore just seems so convoluted that it's very difficult for someone outside of the subculture to kind of like fully wrap their brain around, right? Like that these characters are not like, it's not like Star Wars where it's like, okay, you know, even if you know nothing about Star Wars, even if you haven't seen the movies, you know, you can kind of grasp the big idea. It's like, okay, Darth Vader, he's a bad guy, you know, Palpatine is an even badder guy who manipulates, you know, Darth Vader. And then, you know, there's all the other characters who all kind of just have like one quality, you know, they're heroic and, you know, and they fit various kind of typical sort of dramatic roles. Whereas the FNAF characters, the FNAF story and set and all of this, like it just seems very hard to kind of grasp, and it's hard to, and I don't know, it's like the villainy is very complicated, like the villainy of William, and it's so much of it is based on this just very complicated sort of fantastical you know, tale of the children going into the machines and then doing various things in their machine form, and then, you know, that the backstory of how the possessed machines are created just kind of continues to sort of pile up and get more complicated, and it intersects with this family drama that's not really about much beyond just death, you know? So I don't know. Like, I mean, I can see why kids would be really into this and why like the lore would be inviting, but I don't know, like I can't really sort of think of a strong case study of when, or a strong sort of precedent of a kind of popular sort of fiction franchise that has this level of complexity at its core that has gone on to have like a long legacy in the culture.
I completely agree. Which is, I think, one of the reasons why its popularity has persisted is it's so unsolvable and esoteric and just impenetrable that there's always another layer. There's a reason that there are multiple YouTubers who can make myself included, who can make a living on YouTube just talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, because there's infinite layers. I will say that I said this in the beginning, and I said you wouldn't believe me, but I'll say it again. This is a basic surface level understanding of the facts of the story, and it's also only the first 6 games of the 13 or so that
How many more games are there?
We kind of touched Ultimate Custom Night, but there would be Help Wanted, Security Breach, Ruin, Help Wanted 2, Secret of the Mimic, and then Into the Pit. So 5 or 6, depending on how you want to count separate games. AR 5, 6, or 7, depending on how you want to count different games.
More on the way?
Definitely more on the way. And another movie on the way, and ideally more books, because they just print money. You said that you think that Scott's making it up as he goes along. I think it's very obvious that he wrote different chunks as he went. So when he made the first game, there was no idea that he'd be making more. So that's its own thing. He said that he wrote 2 and 3 at the same time, and then he added 4 as the prequel to be like, and here's what caused everything. And I think it's very clear he wrote 5 and 6 back to back, because 5 is incomprehensible without 6. But yeah, I don't think he ever had an overarching idea of where it was going, and he himself has said that he's not really a horror guy, he's a sci-fi guy. And so the series becoming more about robots, and there is an energy source called a remnant that is what brings them to life. Like, that's the stories that Scott likes telling and is comfortable telling. And so that's why the series really took that curve toward the grand finale. I would say, so I think that what we just covered would kind of be like if we were talking about Marvel, and I just told you, okay, this is Iron Man and this is Endgame. Like, we just told the entire first phase. We just finished Endgame. There's been 12 movies since then, but it's not over, and people don't like them as much, and it's a little more scatter, and also we'd have to talk about all these really long TV shows. So I think this was a good ending point. But there is so much more.
It just seems to me that like the human element of this is quite weak. Like that, and I think just by virtue of the way that the games are, you know, that they reveal very little at a time, and it's very cryptic and that kind of stuff. But it's like, even though in theory there's like this kind of like strong sort of human drama of avenging the death of loved ones and all of that, it doesn't really feel like that side of things is developed that well. And
Mm.
I don't know, it's just like there's something about the degree to which sort of like the human loss and the possible emotional dimension is kind of not fully explored in a way that, yeah, does kind of make it seem like it's just a kind of segue to do this kind of like sci-fi, you know, sort of supernatural kind of stuff about possessed machines for their own sake.
It definitely seems like he's not, and I feel for him, I agree. He's not super comfortable talking about the kids dying, right? It's
Yeah.
not, he's not the kind of guy who would really enjoy a story where we graphically see the kids dying, or we learn who they are so we feel really, really sympathetic when then we know
Yeah.
that they will be killed. And so if you're not going to steer in that direction, there's really nowhere else to go besides the robots.
Yeah.
Which is then what he did. And then, okay, I feel like I talked about the robots a lot. Now I'll talk about the security guard. Oh, he's the murderer's son. Like, that's...
Yeah.
It's very easy to sort of see how he developed the story as he went. I have one bonus question, actually.
Okay.
But I don't know if what you've learned will help you answer it, but I did want to ask. So one of these is not official FNAF art, and the other three are. So which one of these do you think is fake? We have Naked William, Hanged Mangle, Jiggle Chica, and Corpse William.
Which one is not official?
3 of these are real.
What is he saying? Naked William?
He's saying, ha 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 ha, don't move, exclamation point.
Is the fake one Corpse William?
Yes, but why?
I mean, I'm just drawing on
Yep.
on what I learned previously with your Springtrap Bonnie doll.
Mhm.
And then you took the head open and the sort of phallic skull on the
Yeah, yep.
inside. And you said something about how we've never actually sort of seen canonically
True.
what Corpse William looks like. So that made me
True,
think
true,
this
true.
was, yeah, just a fan interpretation.
Yeah, the this one comes from one of the graphic novels. I don't think they meant to imply that he was naked, but he's definitely not wearing any clothes.
Yes.
Scott clarified, because people complained that this was like a depiction of suicide in a kid's game. He said if you look
Yeah.
really, really close, he's holding a ball in his mouth, and it's a paddle ball.
Okay.
So it's a paddle ball dangling down, and so he's not actually hanging himself. And this is real. Scott's just like, he made a game, he's like, people like to sexualize Chica. I think I'll do that too. Like, okay, buddy.
What is
and then-
what is sorry?
Mhm. And then this is fan art. This is just fan art.
Okay. What is the deal with Naked William? What is happening in the context of the graphic novel?
So the context of the graphic novel is that he is taking off his suit to show them that he has been spring locked. So these are all the scars from all the locks closing in on him and him being crushed, but he
Okay.
survived. So he's
Okay.
dramatically revealing, I have been spring locked. So he has to be shirtless to show the scars. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think they understood that it didn't imply that he was like totally naked.
Is what game is Jiggle Chica from?
So the same way that Scott used to make just a bunch of games before FNAF of all different varieties, like
Yeah.
you saw in the video with the platformers and the RPGs. After he gave up control of the franchise to Steel Wool, he made a couple spin-off games. So like one of them is like a side-scrolling fighter game. Like if you ever played the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games on the NES. One of them was just like that, but you're Freddy and Bonnie and Chica and Foxy. And so this is an enemy in a game, just an NPC walking in the background, like you have to jump over or whatever.
Oh.
And yeah, he just made her jiggle. He just chose to do that. It's part of her walk cycle. He just did that. He didn't have to, but he did.
It's fun.
Is it?
I don't know. I've been thinking about like what toys I would want to buy of
Yeah.
the characters, which I suppose is the intended conclusion that
Yeah, merchandising.
Scott Coffin Enterprises would be happy to make me sort of think. And I feel like sort of Springtrap Bonnie, you know, which is to say sort of William in the animatronic form, that seems like a very important character that I feel like I would like to own in some form, since in some ways, like, you could argue that, you know, William is basically the main character of the
Yes.
of the series in some way. It's impossible to have a toy of Mike because he's never actually depicted as anything.
Correct.
He goes unseen throughout the entire series, which is kind of an interesting thing. And then so I guess like I'm trying to think like if I was to do like the family, right? You'd have Springtrap Bonnie, you'd have Baby, because that's the daughter,
Yes.
and then you'd have Golden Freddy, who is the one of the two sons. And then
Yes.
those are the three members of the family that ever manifest as animatronics, correct?
100% correct.
Okay.
They might have merch from the movie. I'm not sure. It does not. I just googled Michael Afton like Funko Pop. It does not seem to exist.
Yes.
But yeah, no, that would be a good representation.
Yeah, because then you have like the family portrait, and that would be fun.
Yes. And then the idea of William having a wife, like he clearly does, right? He has 3 children. No wife is ever alluded to, mentioned, or brought up in any way, ever. Very odd.
kind of like in Rick and Morty.
Ooh.
There's just there has to be a mother character for the purposes, but yeah, there's just no interest in ever actually developing one.
Yep.
Maybe they left her in England.
Ooh, that's a good theory. I'll bring that up at the next round table.
See, she
didn't want to immigrate.
This is what they should do. So here's the backstory, right? So
Mm-hmm.
William and the wife, they got a divorce in England, and he takes the kids to America, and then all this. But then meanwhile, she creates a the franchise of her own in Britain. And then so you can have a whole sort of new frontier of the series, the British locations. So you can sort of say that when they were married, okay, here's my new story. Okay. When they were married, they had a dream that one day they were going to open a pizza parlor together in America. And that was going to be a big sort of, that was going to be how they were going to make their life together. But then something happens, and they can flesh this out exactly why they got in a divorce. But then so she continues her half of the dream in England, and he continues his half of the dream in America. So I think like that could be fun. You could get a bit more mileage out of it that way, and that way you have a fun female villain character, and who knows, maybe she kills some kids too. So
you just basically wrote like a Matpat video. You're like, oh my god, all you'd have to do is go, we never learned Balloon Boy's origin. Maybe Balloon Boy is part of the mother's thing back in Britain, and they brought one over to America with them, and that's where Balloon Boy comes from. No, but like what you just said, that's my job. That's what I do all day. It's like, what if the mother was this?
I mean, it feels like at some point they'll have to explore the mother, just because there's
nothing else to do.
Scraping the bottom of the barrel, right? Yeah, they need.
That was Do you feel? I know you said it was more complex than you could have possibly imagined, but do you at least feel enlightened?
I feel enlightened. Like, I mean, now next time I go to the Funko Pop store and I see all the Five Nights at Freddy's, I'll be like, oh yeah, I know what your deal is, baby. I know what your deal is, Golden Freddy. Like, I'm more sort of fluent in this, and I don't know, who knows? Maybe if I meet one of my friends' children or something, and I need to make some small talk, I can sort of BS my way through a conversation about Five Nights at Freddy's a bit better than I could previously. I don't know. It's I feel more informed. I feel more culturally literate, and as we all know, that's what I'm all about. So I thank you for this.
That's the best, I guess, compliment after all this nonsense that I could get, is that I have taught, after many years of JJ teaching me things, I have taught JJ something. This has been very fulfilling.
Here's a question though. Which game do you think is the most worth playing? Which game of the series, of all the games that we've discussed, of the big six, which one do you think is the most fun?
I like, this is a vast minority opinion, I like the second one. It's very poorly designed, gameplay wise. It's almost like playing a rhythm game, where what you're basically doing is just clicking the same sort of 2 things and keeping time in your head, because you have to wind the puppet box, but you also have to keep checking your office to make sure no one's going to come and get you. So it's like you wind the puppet for 3 seconds, you look at your office, if there's a monster in there, you click a button on the keyboard. When he leaves, you go back to the puppet. It's a very robotic way of just getting through the night. Like there's a solved way to do it, and you just need to be good at it. And a lot of people don't like that, whereas I find that to be sort of more in line with the games I do like playing. I'm very much a more classic game guy, like Mario, Zelda, that kind of stuff. And so I definitely see I'm beating the challenge that's before me as being sort of the more enjoyable way to play a video game versus like learning all of the different patterns of the animatronics and fighting them as they come at you in randomized ways. Like there's some games that you can't win because before the game starts, it's decided it's going to throw stuff at you in a way that's impossible to block, and I just don't like that.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, what about the RPG game? Is that any good?
I liked it. A lot of people have found interest in, again, sort of breaking it apart the way that people do with like Pokemon games. Like these are games for children, but there's an advanced way of playing it if you self-impose certain rules on yourself. And so people found ways of having fun with it.
Well, who knows? Maybe I'll check one of these out now that I know so much about this this franchise.
Yeah, and you'll see, the 17 characters I didn't explain. You'll be like, I don't know what this is. Devin didn't say this.
I know we didn't even approach Cupcake. One of my
your favorites,
one of my currently existing toy friends. So
yeah, Cupcake. Okay. Well, I'll tell you one thing about Cupcake, and then we'll be done here. So Chica carries Cupcake, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people wonder, is the Cupcake alive? And if the Cupcake is alive, is it that the girl Susie can control the Cupcake, or is it just a robot? And so there's a very popular theory. I wonder if you can see where I'm going with this. There's a very popular theory that the Cupcake is possessed by Susie's dog, and that William killed the dog, put it in the Cupcake, and then killed Susie and put her in Chica. And that's why she is the Cupcake, because it's her dog.
That's pretty good. Is the Cupcake a machine?
Yeah, it has eyes that move around. So it's
yeah,
electronical.
That's a pretty good theory.
It's electrical.
Yeah, I like that. That. That's pretty good.
It's definitely a conclusion you can draw from the evidence that we're given, which is all FNAF theories.
Yeah.
All right. Well, audience, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to be Freddies. Freddy stands for friendly, respectful engagement, discussion, and discourse yield success. Obviously, I'd like to thank you, JJ, for being here.
Yes. No, thanks for having me.
Definitely go and check out JJ's channel. He has some phenomenal videos about the kind of stuff I talk about with cultural and understanding cultural symbols. I would personally recommend his, maybe you can tell me what it's called, the 4D character video. Do you remember what that one's called?
Yeah, I think it might just be called something like that. Actually, I can't remember 4D character. That video didn't do so well, so I probably changed the title several times in an attempt to get people to click on it.
I think that was the best explaining you've done of a concept, and it was like a JJ original. I found it to be very enlightening. But whatever it's called, I'll link in the description. So, once again, thank you for having you on.
Thanks for having me, Devin. It was a lot of fun.
You were on a FNAF channel?
Yeah. I did a 3-hour chat on a FNAF channel yesterday. The channel's GiBi. He's a fan of my content, and so we thought we should do a sort of collab. And the conceit of it was just like, I know nothing about Five Nights at Freddy's. GiBi is a big fan of cultural literacy, as I am. And so we decided it would be kind of like a fun little exercise to see like how much of kind of FNAF lore I've just kind of passively absorbed just by being a man in the world over the last decade. And so he had some questions for me. And then, when I answered the questions right or wrong, he would sort of fill me in on the full lore. And that was fun. Wow. And I feel like now I am very up to speed on what this whole ridiculous franchise is all about. And my goodness me, the lore is sure convoluted. So